The main heroine found herself in an awkward spot when two kids approached her. They stared at the maid's food with intense curiosity, clearly dying to taste it. The lady was clearly caught off guard by the sudden appearance of two starving kids in front of her. She had no idea what was going on, because she was sure she'd just been working at the supermarket, stacking ramen. The huge discount had sparked chaos as a bunch of old folks bickered and fought over the stock. The fight kept escalating until they were literally dropping merchandise they hadn't even bought yet. As she picked it up, the heroine sighed heavily, already drained by the whole mess and desperate to quit the job. But when she suddenly lost her vision, she figured she was having a case of low blood pressure. A second later, bright sunlight blasted her hands holding the ramen pack. The girl snapped back to reality, and the blindness and crushing weakness vanished instantly. Looking around, she realized she was in some unknown, run-down, neglected place. Staring into the mirror, she saw a girl she didn't recognize, someone she'd never laid eyes on. From her clothes, she guessed the woman in front of her was medieval era, but the reflection still held the same ramen pack she did. She figured it was just a weird dream from being sleep-deprived, but to her shock, she felt hungry in the dream too. So she decided to eat first and went searching for the kitchen. That's how she found herself in this tricky situation, with kids begging for food. Even though it was a dream, she felt bad for the kids and offered them ramen. One brother grabbed it eagerly, but the other hesitated, still bruised from being beaten not long ago. Not sure what was happening, she explained the food wasn't poisoned and totally safe to eat. To prove it, the main character showed them how it's done. Grabbing a forkful of ramen, scooping up noodles, the lady shoved the fork in her mouth and started chewing like she meant it. The sight and smell made the kids' stomachs growl even louder. "It's super tasty," she insisted, urging them to try even a bite. One brother jumped at the chance. Though spicy, the flavor was so intense, tears welled up in the kid's eyes. She didn't want to leave anyone out and noticed the second kid still doubting, so she called him over to join. The maid kept pushing, saying everything was good, then loaded up another forkful of noodles. The dirty, messy kid tried to hold back, but drool dripped down his chin. Unable to resist anymore, he finally took a bite, making the servant beam with joy. After tasting, the second boy noticed the flavor, and the first one immediately asked for seconds. The main character saved nothing for herself, handing every last bit to the mysterious twins. After stuffing themselves, both kids plopped down on the floor, grinning like crazy and feeling the best they'd ever felt. Noticing their cuteness, the girl warned them if they kept lying there, their food would never digest right. Confused, one brother blurted out how that same lady just said the floor was perfect for them. As the girl named the maid, her brain went haywire. Too much info flooding in all at once. Every new question about Aylin's odd behavior just pushed more memories into the maid's head, full force. Overwhelmed by the sudden flood of memories, the maid froze, stuck, and unable to say a word. It was a novel called Prayer for Healing, where the protagonist wakes up as a saint. In the story, the saint healed every guy she met, no questions asked. The body she ended up in was Aylin Harlan, the prince's nanny, born to a concubine who was a maid herself. This woman was the one pulling the strings. She took in abandoned children and warped them into villains. The more cheerful, trusting prince was Louis Richard. The second one, quiet and sharp, was Evan Richard. The novel's set in the Empire. The first Emperor Richard took a dragon as a partner, giving descendants special powers through their bloodline. Superhuman strength, magic that breaks human limits, even things like foresight or energy so strong it blows the roof off. At 8, the twins unlocked magic. In the original story, they killed Aylin and ran off the moment they could. The main character decided to check the kids' ages to figure out how much time she had left. Evan scolded Eileen for forgetting their age, since they were 7, which really made her depressed. The maid was crushed that even after being reborn, she wasn't the main character and wouldn't get to have a romantic relationship with a handsome guy. The lady knew the main character of the novel dated a bunch of handsome guys, while she was just a regular maid in the original story. Knowing she was destined to die at the hands of the kids, the servant started taking extra care of them. While Eileen was trying to remember why the place looked so abandoned, Louis asked why the maid was being so nice to them today. The main character was shocked by those words, since she hadn't done anything special. Smiling and taking one of the brothers' hands, the girl declared she'd always be kind to them from now on. Louis was surprised by these words and hoped the next day would come as soon as possible. But Evan didn't speak to her, showing his annoyance and distrust of Eileen's words. Before leaving the princes, the main character wished the kids a good night. The main character's heart clenched at the silent look on their faces, knowing she didn't want to die. After falling asleep, she was once again surrounded by a mysterious force that transported the maid to a new location. Scanning the area, Eileen realized she was in a supermarket and figured she'd gone back. The lady found a mirror and realized she was still in the body of the novel's heroine. The girl had no clue where she was, but a sudden squeak snapped her attention. It was this weird little white, fluffy, round creature zooming off, trying to show Miss something. Stumbling a bit, the main character called out, "Wait up!" She couldn't keep up with it. She noticed the creature darting toward the counter and ducking into a box. Grabbing it, she squinted. Is this a kitten or a tiny dog? No answer. She scanned the area and spotted something else in the box. Weirdly, alongside the creature was a can of chocolate. Lady Logic. Kids would go crazy for this stuff. And just like that, she was back in the novel world, wide awake. Looking around, she realized she was in the prince's room. But where were the kids? As she sorted her thoughts, something in her hand caught her attention. She blinked. A cocoa can? What the? Elle checked it out. No way she could figure out how it ended up with her. Tasting it, she realized. It was the real chocolate she'd grabbed in her dream at the hypermarket. Savoring every bite, she wondered, could this stuff even be real? After some thinking, the main heroine decided a supermarket is a possible reincarnation spot, and she can find clues in her sleep. But her train of thought was interrupted by a sudden cry from the kitchen. The maids were tormenting the kids, and Louis was trying to get some bread. The angry ladies mocked the kids, asking, "Since you're hungry, why don't you just try this bread?" Evan tried to stop Louis, but he wasn't about to give up. He was starving. As they continued to torment the kids, one lady hinted that since one of them didn't respond, the maids refused to give them bread. The girl reached out to Louis, but her brother slapped the maid's hand. Evan was furious. Their favorite brother was being bullied. This enraged the two women. They glared at the twins with contempt. One maid lost her cool, shouted at Evan, and raised her hand to strike the boy. The kid shielded his kind-hearted brother and braced for the hit. But a can of cocoa suddenly flew at the woman who tried to hit the prince. Both women were stunned. No idea who dared to do that to them, but Elaine strode forward with a fierce glare and proudly declared she did it. The maids suddenly relaxed when they spotted their friend, worried it was an inspection. The ladies claimed they were just playing with the princes, but the girl didn't trust their words and asked the kids. But Evan said he remembers Eileen saying she'd never believe them. Realizing what happened, the main character was filled with rage, so she hit both maids. Then she announced their dismissal, which caused the ladies to fall into shock and confusion. Eileen reminded them that no matter how forgotten these kids were, they still remained part of the royal family. And insulting royal family members is treason, so if they didn't want to lose their heads, she ordered them to leave. The kids were surprised, but Evan still doubted the situation. Kneeling before the princes, Eileen apologized for her subordinates who had been rude to them. The girl knew the kids needed protectors, because if she left the palace, this situation would definitely repeat. Because of this, the main character decided to change how the princes saw her as a nanny. So if she, as a protector, raised them into good people, they'd never have a chance to become villains. Then Eileen wouldn't die by the kids' hands, loveless, and begged for a chance at forgiveness. After all that, the main character could relax, meet a handsome guy, eat well, and live happily. Meanwhile, at the Rubens Palace, a dark pavilion hosted a meal. The steward faithfully watched his master, ready to carry out any order at any second. The butler asked his master if he was enjoying today's meal, but after taking just a bite, he set his fork down and asked for a looby to be brought to him. The servant wanted to protest, but dared not go against his master's will, so he left to carry out the order. The butler couldn't figure out why the master found such a high-class steak unappealing, but his master was certain the flavor of a looby was unmatched in this world. The next day, the king suddenly decided to go somewhere without asking anyone's opinion. His attendant, worried for his highness, suggested going along anyway, but the master declared he'd go alone. He could handle the tower trip himself. Now, let's return to the estate of the heir princes, where Aelin lived. A full month had passed since the main heroine arrived in this world. Right now, she's trying as hard as she can to adjust to life as a nanny. Aelin's daily routine had her up early to prepare breakfast for the kids. Then, she spent time watching the Air Princes play and cleaning the palace. By lunchtime, the main heroine cooked, grabbed a quick bite, and kept cleaning. After dinner, she tucked the kids in, telling them bedtime stories. She realized housekeepers are some seriously incredible creatures. Aylin's room blazed with brilliance and wealth that surpassed a prince's quarters. The room held a chest brimming with countless jewels and trinkets. Every time the main character walks by, she gets even more certain the former occupant was a total jerk. The nanny visits it just to grab the cleaning essentials, not the jewels. A box of basics for someone obsessed with cleaning. Aylin didn't even get how all this happened. How everything led to this. Every day, the main character wakes up in the middle of an empty megamart. By now, she's gotten along great with a fluffball named Hyangi. She also learned she could only take what fits in her hand, nothing bigger. While the main character grabbed a spray bottle and headed to clean windows, a girl suddenly barked from behind. A cheerful maid came to report she finished cleaning the East Wing's windows. Her name was Emma, new to the cold palace, always amazed by the nanny's tools. The main character found a palace HR assistant, pasty at first, now healthier. Together, they pushed the castle to blinding, sparkling cleanliness. As the two girls were chatting about cleaning products, one of the princes sprinted over. Aylin asked if it was fun to play Louise, and he beamed with enthusiasm. The prince grinned and declared, "With my tree-climbing skills, I'll fetch some apples for the nanny in no time." Miss admired the prince's striking hair, a royal family trademark. Evan ran over too, trying to show off to Aylin, but was a bit miffed he didn't get noticed right away. Aylin caught sight of him and quipped, "How long have you been standing there? What do you want?" But the prince just turned away and bolted, while the nanny mused over swapping scrambled eggs for fried. Emma blurted, "Ugh, talking to Prince Evan is kinda tough, right?" But Miss knew he was a sweetie, just shy, and recalled how in the novel, things were peachy until the kids moved in with the protagonist. Because in the novel, the real plot twist began when Kashar showed up. He was the ex-heir prince who was dethroned after going mad. The main character saved the heir by nixing the med's side effects and curing his madness. The twins and Kashar banded together, then hatched a plan to yank Elsie out of the temple. They vowed to fight tooth and nail to take her with them. That clash became the story's main drama. And now, it might all change. While cooking, the main character realized that tossing in a male lead would turn this into a total mess. She wanted to make stew, but ended up going with a new soup recipe. She was excited to cook the soup in that fancy clay pot she bought at the supermarket. But when she suddenly felt someone unfamiliar behind her, she immediately whacked them with the pot. Aylin guessed it was a thief who had sneaked in through the back door. The lady didn't expect anyone to be here. She'd woken up early just to get her meal in. But the thief was giving off this weird glow. Looking at the guy she'd just knocked out, the maid was stunned. There, lying before her, was a blonde with stunning, refined features. Blown away by his looks, the maid's amazement had no limits. She'd never seen anything like this. After calming down, she realized someone with such looks couldn't be a stranger. After a moment's thought, Aylin recalled that there weren't any blondes in the Richard Empire, except the royal family. There's only one arrogant book hero in the story, a blonde with red eyes and a big ego, Duke Kashar. Checking his eye color, the main character flipped. She couldn't believe it. She panicked. Because in the original story, Kashar had this mania disease that made him randomly kill and destroy things. The Emperor doesn't know it's a curse that got the Duke exiled to the battlefield. To keep his madness in check, he ate a toxic fruit called alubi. Miss felt ashamed she'd whacked the headache-ridden patient with a clay pot, but questions lingered about why he was here. The heroine, not seeing even a hint of improvement in Kasharu, assumed he was dying, and now the girl was terrified. There'd be no mercy for what she'd done. She tossed the body into a supermarket cart and hurried to ditch it. Aylin was in a hurry. Before Kashar woke up and the sun rose fully, dragging the body uphill, Miss realized the Duke would think it was an attack on him. The weight of the body and the relentless sunrise made her nerves worse. Climbing uphill, the heroine spotted a towering, opulent spire. That was the tower bearing the royal family's crest. Kashar's mother was locked inside. The emperor locked his wife up for birthing a mad son. Kashar visited her every year. Realizing how close they were to the tower, Aylin got why the Duke suddenly appeared. But as Miss zoned out, the guy snapped awake and tackled her to the ground. Kashar pinned her down, glaring. He needed to know who she was. The nanny tried to say something, But fear left her tongue-tied. Desperate for answers, the maid asked if he remembered anything at all. Eileen explained she didn't want to toss him out. She just assumed some thief had broken in. He didn't make sense of the girl rambling at him, but he cupped his chin and demanded she open her eyes. Terrified, the heroine burst into tears, begging someone, anyone, to save her. Staring at the girl, Kashar finally pieced together what had happened. This lady whacking a thief and wanting to dump the body? It got under his skin. Duke clutched his head, muttering there were plenty of ways to ditch the evidence. But the second Eileen sensed his grip loosen, she bolted, rage burning in his eyes. Kashar snarled he'd kill her, but Eileen didn't flee. She dropped to her knees, pleading he spare her. She had to save the princes. Hearing her words, the Duke realized the girl in front of him was just a servant. Confirming his suspicions, Miss Kashar didn't want to run or relive this nightmare. She figured royal family squabbles caused enough chaos, so staying alive wasn't such a bad deal. But the Duke just smirked, deciding to pay her masters a visit. He ordered her to lead the way. But the way he said it, Sir Kashar drew his blade. The main character was scared out of her mind, but led the Duke to the princes out of desperation. As soon as he walked into the castle, the Duke asked what his girl had hit him with. Flustered and awkward, Eileen shyly pointed at the clay pot. He felt uneasy while the lady panicked about what to do next. She even thought maybe the Duke had come to kill Evan and Louis. While the lady was scheming how to whack Kashar with the pot again to erase his memory, the door to the room swung open. The princes walked in, just woken up and curious about what was happening. Louis wondered who this stranger was standing in front of them. The kid barely thought and guessed the guy must be Eileen's boyfriend. But not wanting to let go of the nanny he'd taken a liking to, he threatened the stranger and refused to let her go. The other boy even thought maybe the guy was a villain who wanted to kill them. Louis spotted the shattered pot and grabbed a big shard in his hand. The heroine feared the kid would cut himself, while the prince aimed to stop the villain. Every second made Eileen's nerves worse as the situation escalated. Even with a bare blade, Louis's courage held strong. Elaine knew full well that if Kashar wanted to, he could kill anyone without leaving a single trace. The main character, worrying over the twins, decided to take a desperate risk, not knowing what might come of it. Grabbing the Duke's hand, the maid announced she was his girlfriend. Terrified, the nanny gripped his hand tighter and begged Kashar to relax. Louis wasn't buying it and asked the man again if it was really true, while even quietly tried to grab the sharp object. She apologized for her boyfriend stopping by for a visit. Miss tried to immediately escort the Duke out of the house, but after getting a threat, she offered to let him in instead. Seating all three in the dining room, the main character rushed to make breakfast. They sat at the table, all eyes on her as they waited for her to bring the meal. Watching them settle at the same table, the main character felt like she was in a sitcom. Ordering Emma to set the table, the nanny hurried to get everything ready. Stepping closer to her charge, Miss told her not to leave the Duke and princes alone. Kashar shot back that he heard every word and wanted the breakfast ready fast too. Elaine stood there beating the fish, wishing he'd lost his memory. After a while of this, she realized why couples always bickered during fish beating time. Waiting in the dining room, the group sat in tense silence, the air thick with unease. Louis, antsy for breakfast, noticed something off about the nanny's beloved. The prince, out of curiosity, asked what had happened to Kashar's head. Smiling, the Duke explained that someone had tried to knock him out and dispose of the body. Louis, shocked, guessed Aelin had been the one who hit him. The Duke clenched his fists, sneering as he agreed with the young prince's words. But before he could finish, the main heroine popped up from behind with food, asking when it had happened. The nanny said the bump hadn't faded yet, because Kashar hadn't eaten. Breakfast is the best medicine. Serving up a variety of exotic dishes, the heroine wished everyone a good appetite. Louis devoured the new dish, while Evan thanked her for the food. The Duke was floored. He'd never seen or heard of something like this before. Aelin said the dishes were from her hometown and urged them to eat while it was still hot. The heroine remembered a scene in the story where Kashar had seafood, so she guessed he'd like fish. After the first bite, the Duke's eyes bulged with surprise. The heroine was a nervous wreck, not sure if he'd liked the meal. Hearing the not bad assessment, the nanny perked right up and wanted to know just how not bad. Kasha said it was good enough to ease the headache, so Miss started feeding him with a spoon. After he finished eating, the man stared at the maid, lost in thought for a moment. Then he whispered how long it had been since they met. The lady, feeling anxious and playing along, guessed it had been 3 years. Smiling, Kasha suggested the maid take their relationship to the next level. The main heroine never saw it coming and thought the Duke had snapped. Everyone in the hall froze, waiting for Eileen's answer. Standing up, the Duke noted the conversation was as shocking as a sudden punch to the head. Miss felt relieved, thinking Kasha was about to leave. But the guy got down on one knee, kissed her hand, and said Eileen aced the breakfast. So he wanted to thank her and asked her to wait just a second. Holding Miss's hand, Kasha declared it wouldn't be fun if she ran off. That evening, the Duke hopped into his carriage to execute his brand new plan. Mikhail Evans was with him in the carriage, always loyal to his master. Looking at yet another eccentric act, the subordinate thought the Duke had finally lost it. But after thinking it over, he realized there was nothing unusual about it. Kasha had always been impulsive. Once upon a time, a mid-sized country called Vladis started making allies. And over time, growing stronger, it turned hostile toward the Richard family. Eventually, the war started. What began as a minor conflict. They sent Kasha to the war to die, just a discarded prince, but Vladis was in shambles. At 15, the Duke unlocked his royal family's powers right in the middle of a battlefield. But the scientists studying those abilities concluded that power like that couldn't possibly exist. He ended the war in 3 battles. After that, people rallied under the Richards banner. And for that, they gave Kasha the title Vladis. Mikhail couldn't wrap his head around what went down on the Empress's death anniversary. With a grin to at least spark some curiosity, Kasha mentioned he'd met an interesting girl. While on the road, the Duke couldn't stop thinking about the events of that packed day. Approaching the prince's castle, he caught a familiar sweet smell he hadn't inhaled in forever. He couldn't fathom how a lady had the guts to knock him out and toss him aside. Like he wasn't even wounded in battle. That girl was just plain nuts. At first, the second he heard the word sweet, he wanted to kill her on the spot. The pleasant, never-before scent couldn't help but leave the Duke dizzy. The dish was piquant and spicy, incredibly delicious, and also eased his pain. Kasha was ready to forgive anything for this, and remembered it was from dried fish. He wondered if he could replace the poison with something else. Could he regain his sense of taste? After thinking it over, Kasha double-checked whether the imperial family actually lived near the tower. He asked to track down info on this nanny, since he owed her and wanted to repay her. A while had passed since Aylin met Kasha. He sent a ton of different people with a ton of gifts to her. The lady was super flustered by all the wealth and decided to find out who it was. The main character had no idea what was happening or why the Duke was showering her with gifts. The girl figured Kasha would leave and forget her. But the next day, the cold palace was bursting with gifts. She also met Mikhail, who kindly handed her a letter. Long story short, it said if Miss didn't accept the gifts, she'd be killed. The nanny knew if they asked for the gifts back, she'd have to give everything back. The twins were the happiest with all the gifts and new people around. Eileen immediately started stressing over the kids, but the man happily waltzed over. He was Viscount Schopenhauer, who had brought gifts for the princes. It was a variety of toys, with a massive castle at the center. Since the lady was worried she had to keep everything safe to return later, she insisted no one touch anything. Louis was stunned the nanny wouldn't let him play with his gifts. The kid burst into tears. He wanted to play with that toy so bad, and even bragged he'd been a perfect little angel. Then the prince unleashed his secret weapon, the sparkling eyes. She couldn't say no, let him play, but warned not to break anything and promised a better toy tomorrow. Watching Louis's cuteness and joy, the maid blurted out, "How much did this toy cost?" When the nanny saw the price tag, she did a quick math. This could pay her rent for 2 months. Her face went pale, but using the stash Eileen had swiped earlier, she still managed to buy the toys. Our heroine planned to return all the gifts to the Duke and asked Emma to help sort them out. Even as the assistant carted them inside, the lady couldn't stop stressing over the gifts. Evan tugged the nanny's skirt, demanding her attention. It was the first time in a long while the prince had spoken to the heroine. She wondered what he wanted from her, but the kid only asked about problems with the Duke. The girl was surprised the kid had figured out the man who came visiting was the Duke. The prince added he'd heard it from another servant and from the people bringing gifts. Plus, the only one with red eyes in the royal family is Kashar. Elin promised the Duke wouldn't lay a finger on them, but Evan clarified, he's not talking about that. The kid said she seemed a little off, which made the miss realize someone was worried about her. At that, Evan crossed his arms and blushed furiously. It was totally adorable. The nanny couldn't stand it anymore and lunged to hug the kid. Rubbing cheeks, the lady declared she was really glad someone cared about her. Evan noted it didn't seem like they were dating, and the miss wanted to confirm they weren't. But from behind, the Duke's voice suddenly cut in, repeating Elend's words, then added in surprise that the miss feared her lover. The heroine wondered what he was doing there, but the Duke immediately invited her out in a cold tone. The man before her was terrifying, yet so handsome it gave the lady mixed feelings. But ignoring the lady's reaction, Kashar asked why they'd stopped calling him sweet. That behavior scared the heroine even more, and while she was flustered, young Evan offered to talk. But the Duke dismissed him and told him not to interfere. It was an adult conversation. After promising to return soon, the lady and the man headed to the kitchen. The Duke asked why Miss hadn't worn any of the gifts, but she said they weren't for her. But Kasha explained the gifts were just a reward for breakfast. But Aylin only asked to save her life. He clarified that the breakfast reward is one thing, but compensation for the incident is another. To weasel out, the nanny declared she hadn't received anything anyway. But the Duke just laughed and asked if that was really true. He said he saw one of the princes surrounded by toys. Realizing how badly the lady had messed up, she dropped to her knees and regretted not hiding everything. Kasha, to calm her down, said he wouldn't ask for payment, just asked if they'd prepared anything for him today. When the guy said cooking might save her, the nanny perked up and declared she'd prepare 18 dishes. Touching her hair, the Duke said he liked Aylin's cooking, but could offer her something else. Making the protagonist lift her gaze to his crimson eyes, he declared the girl had intrigued him, so he wanted to start their relationship with a date. Aylin was a bit annoyed that the guy made the lie sound so exciting in front of her. After a while, Kasha and the protagonist went on a date. As she strolled the streets, she marveled at all the shops and wealthy folks around. But when the lady zoned out, she didn't watch where she was going and started to fall until the Duke caught her. The maid was beyond embarrassed. Her legs went weak from the rush of feeling a handsome man's chest. Kashar offered to hold her hand. "It's dangerous here." But the lady feared people would stare too much. The guy took her hand and said, "Relax, everything's fine. No need to blush." As soon as they walked together, snarky gossip from the aristocrats followed. Word spread like wildfire. Vladis had a girlfriend. With rumors echoing from every corner, the heroine felt awful. Some women even glared at her for stealing such a hot bachelor. To hide from the stares, the nanny said her throat was super dry. So they hurried to Golden Eden Bar, where a young man greeted them. Eileen immediately asked for the most private spot, preferably with curtains, where no curious eyes could see them. Though the waiter felt awkward, he decided to help and led them to the right table. As she scanned the cafe, the heroine noticed it looked exactly like a romance cafe. Miss realized that once they're in this kind of place, they'd better order something. While the Duke ordered all the popular items, the lady was furious about the local prices. After taking the order, the waiter rushed off, leaving an awkward silence between them. She couldn't tell if her head was spinning from fear of dying or his hot looks, but either way, it felt super awkward. Noticing her fidgeting, the Duke told her to chill. It wasn't going to bite. His words eased the maid's nerves, but Kashar clarified it hadn't bitten yet. He reiterated that Eileen had intrigued him. That's why he'd sent the gifts and asked her out. She guessed maybe he was interested because she came from a lowly background. Their chat got cut short when the kitchen delivered all their ordered dishes. Miss was blown away by the dessert selection, until the waiter brought water and she got sad. The Duke offered her his dishes, but she instantly refused. She didn't have that kind of money. Laughing, he declared, "Enough joking, just eat." He was paying. His words touched and flustered her. Her heart raced a little faster. Giving up her stubbornness, the lady finally tried the desserts. The tempting presentation made her expect big things from these delicious-looking treats. But the first bite made her realize something was wrong with the food. It's sweet, and they must have used expensive ingredients. But something's missing from the taste. The lady realized these fancy treats don't beat a simple pie. The Duke noticed the girl wasn't impressed and asked why. To steer clear of this, Eileen offered the guy a bite too. She jammed the fork in Kashar's mouth so fast it made him flustered. He steadied himself, then nibbled the fork the maid handed him. Then he flexed his charm again, proving how effortlessly perfect he is. But snapping out of it, the girl thought, what's the point of a guy like him wasting time on a nobody like her? So she set the fork down and asked straight up if she really wasn't his type. Kashar blinked. He thought he'd already answered that question. The Duke just smirked, figuring she'd see through his act, and now liked her even more. Kashar even doubted his performance. He'd been trying so hard to sell it. Sighing, Kashar said he doesn't need anything but a lover. The Empress is pushing him to marry. The Duke explained the Empress is desperate to find a woman matching her standards. The heroine's heart raced. This could be Empress Villeno herself. This woman was the main villain of this story, and she made her son the heir to the throne. She originally planned to get rid of Kashar in the war, but he came back as a great duke. Now the Empress wants to find the Duke a lover, so she can keep spying on him. The heroine wondered why the Duke was looking for a lover right here. Aileen knew full well that no matter how handsome Kashir was, this was super risky. She was worried she'd catch the Empress's attention, and something bad might happen to the twins. The Duke, after finishing his plate, said he really liked the Mrs. Food and found her pretty amusing. Then, in a deliberate and provocative move, he licked the crumbs from the lady's cheek. He also pointed out that everything here was pretty bland, which made Aileen way better. By evening, the heroine was sent back to the cold palace. The miss couldn't figure out why she'd been so quiet, but in the end, she said she was now Kashar's actual lover. Aileen was driving herself crazy trying to forget about that handsome Duke. When she returned to the cold castle, the lady noticed a bunch of girls waiting by the gate. Emma's expression made it clear she was confused and didn't know what to do. As the heroine approached, she asked, "Who are all these people gathered at the castle?" One of the women present, obviously of higher status, said she wanted to see the princes. Elaine told her the lady could talk to her. The aristocrat smirked unhappily and handed over a letter. She announced the reason for the visit. Lady Laman is inviting the princes to dinner at Ullage. Elaine was shocked because such an important event was in the novel, and the maid forgot all about it. The Ullage dinner is a special annual event hosted by Lady Liman, a society woman and top figure in the empire's restaurant business. Every family brings special drinks and delicacies made with secret recipes. In the original novel, the twins were invited to the dinner, but a drunk aristocrat stabbed Evan with a decorative knife. It was an accident, staged to impress Empress Villeno, who despises every royal family member except the heir prince. She intentionally invited the princes to the dinner and disguised the incident as a fight between the twins. Elaine found this strange because the event happened in spring, when the princes were 8 years old. She didn't get why the invitation came 10 months early and couldn't believe the original story was changing. The heroine speculated it might be because of meeting Kashar. That night, the worried protagonist watched the prince's peaceful sleep. Elaine knew if she refused, the Empress would be told the plan had failed. While the nanny vowed to protect Louis and Evan at all costs, the Duke received a new report. It had all the info they could dig up on the main heroine from Kashar's servants. The report said Aelin came to the palace at 12 and became a maid with a burning ambition for power. But despite that, she worked hard to uphold the imperial family's dignity, which is why the princes followed her. The servant was on edge, knowing the master's reaction could be totally unpredictable. The steward said no matter how much he thought about Aelin, she gave him the creeps. Kashar smiled and said this girl has no idea she's messing with his illness. The Duke said if he chowed down on her cooking, he could survive a month without those alubi fruits. But the servant didn't get why not just hire her as a cook, instead of making her some love interest. Kashar explained this nanny's got enough culinary chops to turn her into a love interest. Her cooking brings back memories from his distant past, when his mom used to cook for her only son. People thought Empress Viviana was nuts while she was alive. She never said she loved Kashar, and once made him green soup for his birthday. After telling him she was sorry, Viviana stopped visiting and insisted she never had a son. It was Aelin Harlan who brought back memories of his mom's bizarre cooking. The guy knew the lady could heal him, but Kashar didn't ask for anything. He just watched as she tried to back away from him. He didn't like it one bit, so he declared he'd catch Aelin before she even had a chance to think. The main heroine left the palace admin building super cheerful. Since today was the long-awaited payday, the miss wanted every day to be this happy. While the other servants whispered behind her back, she was thinking about how great it'd be to make steaks for the princes today. But when she listened closer, she heard someone planning to meet Duke Kashar. Aelin froze. Hadn't she agreed to give him an answer today? The nanny realized this guy had invited 2 girls in one day. That really ticked her off, so the main heroine crumpled the envelope in her anger. She decided to teach this jerk a lesson, so he'd never think about running again. A few days passed, and Diana Enders showed up at the Rose Garden to meet the Duke. The lady said she was upset he'd been so busy, but happy to see him now. Kashar remembered Viscount Enders was the Empress's trusted aide, so he wanted to send her away. But a girl's unexpected voice cut him off, calling him "sweetie." Turns out a new girl had just walked into the Rose Garden, and no one had expected her. Main heroine, tears streaming down her face, screamed that Kashar had betrayed Lady and rushed toward him. Then she dashed in, buried her face in his chest, leaving the Duke completely baffled. Everyone watching the scene was stunned. Eileen lifted her gaze to him, voice trembling. "Is our 3-year relationship really ending right here?" She pressed on. Were all those sweet words he whispered to her just lies? The guy scanned the heroine, instantly recognizing his gifts on her. He urged her to calm down. "The Viscount's daughter was just talking to me," Kashar begged. "How can I prove my words are true?" He gently brushed her cheek. "You're the only one for me." The crowd gaped in shock. Lady Jayain turned pale and swooned. Duke yanked off his coat, threw it over her shoulders. "I'll stay right here until you calm down," he ordered. "Forget that pumpkin-faced girl." Hearing this, meeting his gaze, the heroine blushed furiously. Kashar's illness forced him off the throne. The Emperor made a contract to contain his madness. He'll vanish once his madness fades. This contract's a dog leash. Later, the heroine and the guy headed to their prearranged meeting spot. The Duke complimented her appearance. Truth be told, he was genuinely stunned. Crossing her arms, the heroine blushed and said it was all Emma's doing. After making a couple of jokes, Casper asked if Eileen would become his girlfriend. Even if it was a fake engagement, the lady agreed with one condition. It was awkward, but she still asked him to take guardianship of Louis and Evan. The Guardianship Institute is a system where a powerful family, or the Emperor, raises an orphaned kid until they're adults. Eileen knew she couldn't protect the kids alone. They needed serious strength and authority to stay safe, exactly what the Duke had. And the lady knew she wouldn't get another shot at this. Casper caught on fast. She was after protection from the Empress, so he went along with it. But his catch was that the heroine had to cook for him personally. The lady turned beet red and asked how long she'd be stuck doing it. The Duke said it'd last as long as he wanted it to. She thought, maybe one day she'd make such bad food he'd ditch her on the spot. Weighing it all, Eileen gave in and asked to sign the contract. After he rang the bell, the butler showed up right away. Caspar told him to draft a notarized agreement. Within minutes, the servant handed them the paperwork they needed. It was also written that when they needed to part ways, they'd just calmly say goodbye. The catch was, if one of them found their true love, they'd split up. The Duke fell silent after hearing that and started thinking hard. Eileen wanted to make sure Kashar didn't fall for the main character in this novel, to protect the princes. Because in the original novel, Elsia and the hero Michael end up together, and the Duke starts a brutal war that swallows up the whole continent. If things went the same way, Eileen couldn't even imagine what would become of the princes. Noticing Kashar wasn't rushing to say anything, the lady asked if he wanted to add any conditions. Instead, the Duke let out a dramatic sigh, signed the contract, and said he'd keep it. After wrapping up, they rushed outside. Each had a bunch of important stuff to do. The lady offered her hand, saying she hoped they'd work well together in the future. But instead of the expected handshake, the Duke suddenly grabbed her hand and kissed it. Eileen was totally flustered, and every passerby turned their heads. Then, stepping closer, Kashar made a request for the lady to take care of him. That same evening, the palace maid at the Empress's castle was begging for mercy. Valleno didn't care. All she did was complain about the maid screaming like a wild animal after the beatings. While beating the servant, the Empress fumed that Kashar had the nerve to mock her. He'd scolded her earlier for shoving his woman on the Duke. He also said the Empress kept sending new girls whenever he already had a girlfriend. So the Emperor wanted to know why his wife thought she could get away with this. The palace started buzzing about the Duke's lover, who'd just dragged the Empress into the dirt. The nursemaid taking care of the princes was getting called an angel. The Empress remembered Eileen Harlan, the one who'd just crushed her pride. When she calmed down, Valleno started thinking about why Kashar had hooked up with the servant. Sipping wine and staring out the window, she thought back to the previous Empress, Vivian. Madame remembered how the Emperor had genuinely loved the beautiful mother of Kashar. But that only lasted until Vivian lost her mind. Valleno spotted a perfect chance and decided to go with her original plan. She tried to kill Kashar and blame it on the crazy Vivian, but the Empress botched the spell. The guy just snapped. Even though losing the Duke's title eased her guilt, it still gnawed at her. The lady couldn't figure out how she managed not to lose her mind, and guessed the maid wasn't as simple as she looked. Valleno also remembered that Marquise Tuberos had invited the abandoned princes to a party in Oloje, which made the Empress hatch a new plan and smash a glass in giddy anticipation of revenge. The handmaidens fretted that Her Highness could cut herself on the broken glass, but she paid no mind, just asked for a pen and paper, wanted to stare that brat down herself. The handmaidens then reported that Crown Prince Valentine and 7th Prince Michael are asking for an audience. Madame agreed to receive them and headed to the reception room, where her worried son was already waiting. As soon as the Empress entered, Valentine rose at once. He was really worried about her. He'd heard the rumors that his mother wasn't well and said he didn't believe them. Touched by her son's concern and his defense, Madame decided to ask what the 7th Prince was doing here. Turns out he came too, worried sick about his mother. The Empress wasn't impressed and ordered him to stop spouting nonsense and help the Crown Prince. Valleno was so bitter toward him. After giving birth, she lost her looks, and the Emperor started avoiding her. Plus, he had no authority as a member of the imperial family. Madame called him a useless thing and went to have tea with her eldest son. Valentine smirked at his younger brother, basking in his superiority. A week had passed since those scandalous events everyone in high society was buzzing about. Emma didn't get what the nanny was up to, staring out the window through some weird gadget. The main character explained she was just waiting for something, kept scanning the area, then suddenly screamed. Warning she'd be out briefly, Aileen dashed to the Duke's carriage. The lady greeted Kashar with glee, declaring she'd missed him, but her eyes stayed locked on the document in his hands. The maid tried a few times to grab it, but failed. Miss grew angry, took a clumsy step, and face-planted onto the Duke. The main character blushed, realizing she was sprawled on Kashar's chest. Hugging Aileen, the guy said, "If you wanted a hug, you just had to ask." The girl still wasn't used to chatting up such a hottie and decided to savor the moment until passersby started gawking. Miss tried to pull away out of embarrassment, but the Duke waved the document and said, "No need to be shy now. We're a couple." Noticing Kashar was even smugger in person than in the book, the lady eagerly pulled out the document. The document stated the Duke vowed to be the guardian of Louis Richard and Evan Richard until they came of age. Upon seeing the Emperor's seal, the nanny's happy tears flowed. The kids' tough times were finally over. Finally, those adorable little ones could grow up safe and sound. Aileen thanked the Duke, realizing it wasn't easy to get that document. Noticing her reaction, the guy smiled and said, "Since you liked it so much, miss, I want you to listen to my request." In her good mood, the lady didn't think twice and said she'd do anything. Hearing that, Kashar declared he wanted them to live together. The main character agreed to live in the Duke's castle at first, but then it hit her what she'd just said. Kashar said he'd never liked it and had been sad watching her live in that cold castle with the princes. Noticing how the gossipers, thrilled by the news, hurried off to tell others, the guy smiled. The Duke then clarified he was serious about his proposal because it would be safer for the princes. The main character agreed to negotiate with the princes on condition that Kashar join them at the eulogy party. She knew she could use her lover as a shield to reject the proposal, but that would really complicate the prince's entry into high society before they come of age. And so, through her, she decided to publicly declare that Kashar would be the children's guardian. The guy took it as a date invitation and suddenly closed the distance with Aileen. He leaned in toward her lips, gently reached her ear, and said he'd make time for it. But for such a favor, the main heroine would have to pay the Duke back. Flustered and thinking he was about to kiss her, Miss turned bright red and pushed her partner away. Kashar asked if the maid had never kissed anyone, to which she started waving her hands and insisting she'd done it countless times. Laughing at the amusing main character, the guy said he'd be eagerly waiting and got into the carriage. Later, the nanny was walking the halls when cheerful Louise ran up to her. Jumping into her arms, the boy boasted he'd already taken a bath and was now a man. Sitting on the maid's lap, she asked if the prince regretted going to a party at another castle. The main character couldn't help worrying about what might happen there, but knew she wanted to protect those kids. In one thing, the lady was 100% sure. Unlike the original, things would be different there. Remembering something, Eileen asked if Louise liked living here, to which he replied, "Of course. We used to live here with Mom." Taking the girl's hand, the prince wanted to take her somewhere and show her something. Leading the main character to their room, Louis started digging through one of the dresser drawers. Then, he happily pulled out grape juice his mom used to make for them. It's not drinkable anymore, but he and Evan still keep it. Eileen was touched and happy, realizing that if they showed her such a treasure, it meant they trusted her. Louis added that he remembered his mom's words, to always live really brightly, and if they follow it, then one day love for them will return. The kid was happy his mom was right. After all, Aylin ended up loving him. The lady realized she'd been wrong to see this place as a nightmare for the kids. This house was full of memories of their late mom, but Evan ruined the vibe. He said their mom was wrong, which left Louise and the nanny completely baffled. No matter how hard his brother tried, nothing was going to change. Grabbing Louise, the kids spat out that the nanny was trying to send them off to strangers. She got told to get out, or the kids would storm out instead. The lady realized the Duke overheard their talk and totally misread the situation. The nanny caved in, scared the kids might be out there somewhere in the dark. Emotional and on edge, Miss whispered goodnight to the princes before slipping out. Aylin changed into her PJs, then sat across from the mirror with the bottle she'd been given. Aylin was crushed. She never thought Evan would take it so bad. She thought she could convince them about the relocation and guardianship deal. Never saw this misunderstanding coming. But with the Empress herself sending her an invite, Kashar was the only one reliable enough to guard the princes. Figuring she'd jumped the gun, Aylin flopped onto her bed and, as always, woke up in the supermarket. As soon as the girl appeared, a white, fluffy creature darted around the corner. Happy to see Balash, the heroine hurried over to pet him. Eileen figured since they were heading to the eloge party, they'd need to bring something for the auction. The charity auction was the main event of the party. Nobles sold food, alcohol, or special trinkets that represented their families. In the novel, Eileen had once sold Prince's grape juice. It was bought for a pittance and dumped in front of them. She noticed all the desserts here were total junk. Her chocolate would definitely take first place, but most of the guests were the Empress's people. As the heroine was deep in thought, Balash suddenly wriggled free from her hands. Then, he bolted off in some direction, making her worry a little. Miss went after him. Her fluffy buddy never just did things on a whim. When Eileen saw where Balash had led her, she beamed and scolded herself for not thinking of it first. Overjoyed, she started fussing over her beloved pup again. Miss decided to take this exact item for the auction. She'd grab something for the kids tomorrow. After saying goodbye to Balash till tomorrow, Eileen snatched up what she wanted and returned to her world. But as soon as she vanished, a long-haired man stepped out from the corner, calling for the fluffy one. He immediately jumped into her arms, showing they were clearly close. Days flew by in preparation until the one where the eulogy party would kick off finally arrived. The heroine was in a green fancy dress, while the princes were dressed in blue and navy suits. Though the banquet host was the Marchioness, the party somehow ended up in the Empress's hall. The ladies felt like prey, like they'd been thrown into enemy territory. Louis tugged at the nanny's dress and asked her if she thought he looked handsome. The boy loved the flashy clothes, but annoyed, pointed out who'd sent them. Elaine said the clothes weren't from her, but from the same guy who'd given them the toys. The boy remembered and asked if it was the heroine's boyfriend. Turns out, Louis didn't answer his brother's question, but just pointed at the Duke behind the girl. He was stunned by the girl's beauty, even though he was clearly a looker himself. Elaine couldn't believe the guy was actually in a suit and didn't get why she acted so weird around him. She apologized to the princes for not warning them earlier that Casher would be joining. But Louis didn't mind, since the party needed a +1, and if he were taller, he'd have happily walked her in. The Duke called the kid a baby, said he was almost a teen now. Once he grows up, he'll marry Elaine. Because the guy took it personally, he declared that marriage is between lovers, not a nanny in her charge. Louis wasn't fazed at all, and said there's nothing to it. Adults dating doesn't automatically mean they're getting married. Kasha gently grabbed the kid's cheeks and said, "You're talking about fake love like it's a bad thing, but that only applies to her, not real love." Then he turned to the main heroine and asked, "Am I right that people who love sincerely stick around till the end?" Miss hesitated, caught the Duke's deadly glare, and had no choice but to agree. And just as the already awkward tension was thickening, Evan burst in with his declaration that words are lies. The main heroine had no idea what to say and was stunned by his coldness. Unlike his brother, Evan stared at the lady with total distrust and anger. Eileen wasn't sure if she should tell the kids everything to clear up the misunderstanding, but if she did, she'd have to admit she knew the future. But the Duke cut into their conversation, saying, "Just wait and you'll see what happens." In the original novel, Kasha started a continental war over the main heroine, and kids died in the massacre. To protect the kids and end these fake relationships, she wanted to find the Duke a new love. After gathering in one place and hearing their introductions, they all walked into the hall together. The nobility was in a panic. Now they knew the rumors were true. They were all talking about the prince's nanny who seduced Kasha and the abandoned princes. The main character felt off and wanted to cover the kids' ears, but her thoughts were cut short by a guy who suddenly suggested killing them. He pointed at a hippo-like lady and a goose-like woman. Then he added, "We could also take out that pig and the goat over there." Because if any of these animals dared to talk about his beloved like that, they'd pay for it. As she talked the Duke out of the senseless bloodshed, she felt a tug on her skirt. It was Louis, asking if he could play with them and his brother. Turns out there were a lot of kids at the party, all brought by their parents. The girl knew the twins needed friends their age, so she asked Emma to fetch the box. The kids had no idea what the boxes were that the nanny gave them. Something was packed inside. The main character explained, "These are treats. Share them with the other kids." The kids were a little shy about the kindness, but Louis said he'd go ahead and share them. Aylin also told them to let her know right away if anyone tried to mess with them. Watching Evan keep glancing back and trying to hold back, the miss figured someone wanted to talk to her. But her thoughts were interrupted by the announcement of Empress Vieno's arrival. This woman was dressed in a purple gown, her fierce gaze sweeping the room. As soon as the Empress descended the stairs, another lady hurried over to her. Bowing, she declared it was a huge honor to host the Olaju party in the Imperial Hall again. Vieno replied to Marchesa Tuberos that she'd been eagerly waiting for this day. She also decided to say something and started moving closer. As they whispered, both women's scheming expressions were clear as day. Eileen immediately sensed their mockery and the way they were watching her. Then, as if nothing were wrong, the Marchesa hurried to get close to Eileen. The lady chuckled and said she was grateful the heroine arrived. After all, she was the main topic of conversation now. Then she asked, "What brought Vladis here?" Seeing the girl's discomfort, the Duke pulled her close and said he couldn't send his fragile beloved alone to such a dangerous place. So he bought the invitation from the Baron. To mock the maid, the Marchesa asked if she'd brought any goods for the auction. But the lady didn't flinch. She pointed to where her gift for the event had been delivered. It was quite large and covered with a cloth, which had the ladies all abuzz. The girl knew they were trying to embarrass her, but it wouldn't work. She hurried to reveal it. Turns out, under the white cloth were bottles of a special drink. Everyone's attention was locked on this oddity because no one could figure out what it was. Grabbing the bottle, Eileen explained it was the traditional alcohol of a country called Makol, surrounded by sea on 3 sides. She also said it was made from fermented grain, which had the guests whispering among themselves. A few disgruntled folks started doubting if it was even real alcohol. They figured Eileen had hauled cheap hooch to the auction. The Marchioness cackled, mocking how in a place where they sell special goods, symbolizing noble families, you can't just toss up something untested. But the main heroine wasn't fazed, so she announced a tasting right then and there. Eileen urged everyone to line up and rush to try it, but all eyes were on the Empress's reaction. One of the girls declared no one would ever want to drink this junk. Alcohol's only wine. But before they could finish, a loud crack echoed through the banquet hall. It was the Duke, smashing a statue and barking at everyone to freeze. The girl fretted over the sapphire statue, but Kashar scoffed and said he'd make it up. Once the guy was done posturing, he asked Eileen for a single glass. Shaking the drink, she carefully poured it and handed it to her lover. The Duke grabbed it, took a few big gulps to really taste the oddity. Everyone knew Kashar was picky, so they were all watching nervously. To their shock, he actually liked it. Then, a green-haired girl stepped forward, asking to taste the drink, too. Miss noticed the girl's unique look and realized she was a foreigner. Then it hit her. This was Princess Phrygia Alaksha, second daughter of King Lakshi, whose family owns the Magic Tower. Though she taught at the academy, she was actually the leader of Elvatoria and could get anything she wanted. She was beautiful, brilliant, and gifted, and didn't give a damn what the Empress thought. The Duke needed a wife to avoid a continental war, so the lady realized she'd just found him the perfect match. Holding the drink up close, the princess said she loved its aroma. Every lord and lady there suddenly felt their eyes on her. But suddenly, Elaksha dropped the cup and went silent. The heroine was about to rush over to check on her when the princess clutched her mouth, and the crowd instantly started gossiping. He exchanged a glance with the Empress, who gave her approval, while the crowd screamed Eilina had poisoned the drink. He pointed at the lady, shouting she was a killer. This wasn't just a crime. It was a full-blown diplomatic disaster. So he announced the main character needs to be arrested right away. The Empress, smirking through her faith, gave the order to arrest her. The girl was scared. Guards raised their swords and started moving in, but the princess's voice cut through the chaos, talking about that soft, lingering taste on the tip of your tongue. The drink was refreshing as hell with that subtle grain aroma, and just a touch sweet. Elaksha declared that wine wasn't even in the same league as his, then asked the organizers if she could join the auction. The Marchioness, hearing that, felt awkward and had no clue what was going on. Before answering, she glanced at the Empress, saw her furious face, then said no. The princess was crushed she'd have to pass on that divine wine. Aristocrats were already scrambling to taste it. The main character was caught off guard by the rush, but gathering herself, she asked to get in line. Anyone who even took a sip was totally pumped and amazed by that grain-based drink, so she asked if that was enough to qualify. Sighing, she accepted the bitter truth. The drink was going on the auction block. The Marchioness rushed to catch up and smooth things over with the Empress. The whole hall was still buzzing about that incredible alcohol flavor. And that's when Gianna Endres approached her. That's the one who fainted in the rose garden. She warned Eileen that no matter what she tried, she couldn't outdo the Ender family's ruby wine. The lady was stunned. This was the drink that had outdone every rival at the auction for 4 straight years. Eileen was curious to see what it looked like, since she hadn't yet run into local hooch. When she got no reaction, Gianna blew her top. How dare Eileen ignore her? The main character noticed Ender pinching her lip in anger and stepped closer to tap her cheek gently. Leaning in, the lady warned, "If you keep doing that, you'll draw blood soon." "I'd love to taste that ruby wine," Eileen said. "If it's been winning 4 years straight, the flavor's gotta be amazing." Gianna blushed like a tomato from the close-up, but confirmed the wine was top-notch. As the main character worried Ender was feverish and red-faced, Kashar suddenly glommed onto her. The Duke explained he'd approached her before his lover cheated, and using the moment, Gianna snuck out. Kashar muttered he was sad they knew so little about each other, but the girl just laughed. "Of course! We're strangers." Moving close to Eileen, Kashar snapped, "Stop saying that! We're lovers. I've had enough." To avoid emotional damage, the Duke begged for comfort. Eileen agreed, heading to a private spot to sort things out. Walking onto the terrace, the main character grinned. "I set something up for you, Duke." Then she grabbed a small box and a bottle of her hooch from her bag. The cell held a cheesy bacon potato pancake that paired perfectly with McColl. Turns out Miss had stashed the food in a magic lunchbox hidden in Eileen's room. Thanks to it, even the cheese was still good. But the Duke was a bit baffled by the comfort. The heroine reminded him, cooking for her was in the contract, and this dish was made just for Kashar. She handed him a bite, then hurried to pour the drinks, before the salty, greasy taste faded. Then she suggested a toast to their successful partnership. Eileen tried to read if he liked it. He wasn't used to chopsticks, but he ate it well. Kashar noted it was delicious, crispy on the outside, spicy and salty inside. The heroine appreciated the feedback and mentioned she loved getting compliments. After pouring another round, the Duke asked if Eileen feared him. Miss replied, "Sure she did, but since he's a looker, he can't be all bad." The Duke didn't get the connection, but watched her happy face closely. Since they'd all had their drinks, the heroine suggested heading back to the hall. But just as they reached the door, Kashar caught her wrist, stopping her from leaving. He asked why she hadn't comforted him and leaned in for a kiss, when Eileen suddenly brushed his forehead. Noticing this, the lady asked about his headache. The guy shot back, "Do I look that sick?" She was torn about whether someone on poison could even drink but couldn't say it aloud, so she brought up how common headaches were. Honestly, she was just worried he was hurting, and only Elsie could fix that in the story. Either way, Kashara would have to meet his savior at least once. She also wondered if there were other ways to help the guy. Their awkward silence got cut short when Sir Michael asked the Duke to step outside for a sec. The Duke's aide gave the main character a suspicious, flustered look. Looking at his face, she got the vibe his expression had gone dark. Eileen headed to check on the kids, only for Emma to rush up to her. His nervous energy said something went down while she was away. Turns out the Eppletone heir and the princes had a showdown. A stranger's kid had his foot on the prince's offered gifts. He claimed the princes had no dad, said they lived alone in that icy palace with the Duke as their guardian. Main character sprinted toward the kids as fast as her legs could carry her, but she caught Evan giving the kid a brutal beatdown. Aelin tried to calm him down, but the Eppletone heir threatened to tell his father everything. At one point, the mother of the beaten Giovanni caught sight of the scene too. They immediately started blaming Aelin for teaching the kids to fight. She declared the Eppletone heir wronged her princes, which made the nanny furious. But they didn't see it as a reason to beat their kid. The Empress saw a chance here and declared the little princes were in the clear. Then, with a sly smile, she asked the Marchioness for her take on it. The heroine tensed up instantly, sensing serious danger. Madame claimed the twins are too young, so whoever's closest to them is at fault. Aelin realized it was all planned, but she didn't back down. Louise and Evan are part of the royal family. Refusing to acknowledge that's an insult to the imperial family. Scared, Giovanni's dad said it was just a kid's fight. The Empress slyly backed the Count's son and blamed Evan for swinging at him. The Eppletons perked up, feeling backed, and demanded a proper punishment. Vaina said even though Duke Vladis is the legal guardian, the nanny's mostly to blame. The scared, tearful kids hid behind the only one who tried to protect them. The Empress admitted she was partly to blame for leaving the prince's upbringing to just a nanny. The Marquise backed His Highness and declared the woman in charge of their upbringing deserved 30 lashes with the whip. Right after that, a knight showed up with a smug grin and a whip, clearly waiting for this moment. Eileen panicked and was terrified, but she couldn't walk away. Those kids were depending on her. The boys were so worked up and scared. Sweat broke out all over their bodies. But the heroine stayed calm and quickly ordered Emma to take the princes away. The woman hesitated, so the nanny raised her voice and demanded immediate action. Since she was the Duke's fiancée, they let her keep her dress on. She climbed onto the table, bracing herself for the pain. Eileen wanted to bolt right then, but she couldn't. The twins would take the fall if she did. At that moment, she remembered Kashar from the contract, who hadn't promised to protect her. But they'd shared a potato pancake with McColl, so she prayed he'd show up. As the knight swung the whip, a burst of red energy sliced through his arm. Instead of the lashing, there was a soldier's scream and the thud of his severed hand hitting the floor. The Duke approached his fiancée and muttered he hadn't expected to see blood in the Empress's palace. Then, in a thunderous voice, he ordered his bride to come to him. Overjoyed, the main character threw herself into her lover's arms, crying. The Empress, regaining her composure, was furious about such behavior in her palace. While Aelin was hugging him, Kashar declared he'd punished the insect who tried to harm his daughter-in-law and didn't see what the big deal was. The Empress tried to point out the nanny's mistake, but the Duke said the punishment was aimed at the wrong person. At that moment, Dionysus Shirrahan Richard walked in, asking, "What's all the commotion?" All the guests rushed to greet their majesty, and the girl realized he was Kashar's and the prince's father. The excited Empress approached her husband and said it was a huge honor that the Emperor had come to the eulogy party. But Dionysus said nothing, just repeated his question about what was going on. The Empress explained the young princes had joined the party for the first time, and there'd been a minor conflict. After that, Dionysus looked at his youngest sons and saw their scared faces. He asked the hostess for details, so she bowed and said Evan had started swinging his fists over a joke by the Count's son. Hearing this lie, even though everyone had clearly seen and heard the truth, but this info would make the Emperor side with the Empress. The girl clenched her hands in helplessness, knowing that even if she told the truth, it'd still sound like a lie. Kashar was so furious he wanted to kill them all, but a man suddenly blurted out that his wife was lying. It was the heavily drunk Marquis Gerard, strolling leisurely through the hall. The lady freaked out instantly, shouting that he was spouting nonsense. Watching him chug Macallie and keep chillin' like that, Eileen figured he was a total lunatic. The main character overheard that, while they were on the terrace, a secret auction wrapped up, and the Marquise had won it. The courtiers were stunned when they saw the final auction bids. The top spot went to Evan Richard and Louis Richard. Macallie products, priced at 4,900 gold each. Lady was beyond furious, calling her husband a crazy freak show monster. The Marquis explained his wife promised him he could buy whatever he wanted since she'd be too busy terrorizing the nanny. Scared of the Marquis, she clamped his mouth shut so hard he couldn't breathe. Dionysus decided to press Marquis Gerald, wanted to know exactly what he meant. The Empress grabbed his hand instantly, telling him not to listen to the drivel of a drunk man. The Emperor declared he wanted to hear the Marquis's account. The Marquis bit his wife's hand to break free. The guy pointed at the Count and spat. "Your wife and the Empress conspired with those pigs to whip the nanny." Words like that had the whole Jeremy family on edge, panicking. The Emperor decided to issue an edict, targeting Count Eppletone and his wife for insulting the imperial family. Halfway through the edict, the family's faces were going pale, getting worse with every word. After that, Dionysus kept punishing the culprits, and the Lehman's wives for fraud would go to prison, while other charges would be reviewed in court. Realizing what kind of mess they were in, the Marchioness pleaded with tears in her eyes to the Empress. She said, "Doesn't Vienna know this is all one big misunderstanding?" But His Highness pretended not to know his friend would act like that. The main heroine couldn't even figure out why this happened when Kashar suggested they get out of there. Then Eileen rushed to hug the princes and said, "Let's not stick around here." A second later, they all piled into the carriage and headed back home. Only once they were clear of the castle did the girl calm down and get a clear head about the situation. The nanny checked if Louis was okay, and he agreed fast since she protected them. The girl wanted to ask about Evan too, but he didn't even turn his head. Louis asked if it was true his younger brother became their guardian now. Eileen realized her own fault for not telling them earlier, but still agreed, saying she personally asked for the favor. The main heroine admitted she begged for the prince's protection. Louis started crying once he realized they were totally helpless, and the nanny had to handle it all. Kashar said it's totally normal for kids to not be able to do anything. Louis said he wanted to protect Eileen when he grew up. After that, they started snuggling. Evan interrupted, "Even if you grow up, nothing will change. Abandoned imperial family members can't protect anyone." The Duke said the younger brother's way worse than the older one. "That's why my girlfriend chewed him out." Kasha explained, "If I can win the twins' affection, they'll stay with Eileen. She's their nanny, so it's weird to complain without even trying to protect her." "So, who is she to you guys?" The boy clenched his tiny fists in anger and said, "I really hate her." Now Evan's certain the nanny's become super important to them. The kid apologized. He knew the maid was just trying to protect them, but he was still mad because he felt helpless. The girl was amazed that such a little kid had so much on his mind. He just couldn't open up to Eileen. While the nanny was thinking, Louise hugged her tightly and said, "She's the most important person in my whole world." The Duke sighed and asked, "Do you need my protection?" The kids nodded firmly. The main girl was shocked the kids actually accepted Kasha. He pulled his girlfriend in and said, "You've got 2 little knights now. That's pretty awesome." The girl blushed under his tight hug. The Duke smirked. "Guess I've got some young competition now." After a while, they finally made it to their palace. Before going in, Eileen stopped and said, "I need to talk to the princes about something." Main heroine said she got a move offer to a place way better than this one, and it's not the Imperial Palace. Girl clarified it's Kashar's residence, and since he's their new guardian, it'll be way safer there. Hearing their home's not going anywhere, and they can always return, the kids agreed to the move. Louis asked, "Now that we're all gonna live together, can we be a family?" Agreed with him. "Yeah, we can be that. Eileen's the mom, Kashar's the dad." As she said, "That's not happening. The Duke's our older brother." He zoned out. He was pissed that her guts were growing. How she even tried to rough up his girl while he was in a meeting with the Emperor. Dionysus asked, "How'd Kashar spend his mom's anniversary?" She killed herself after getting booted from the throne and locked up. The Duke knew the Emperor always backs Vienna, so he's trying to act like he never left Vivian. His Highness, hearing about Olage's party, figured since he was at the Empress's castle, he'd stop by. He didn't know why Dionysus joined him, but it was lucky he wasn't around. Otherwise, he'd have cut off her head, not just a hand. He almost lost it, but held back. Had to, after tasting Eileen's cooking. But he's got a bad feeling it's not over. Kashar's wondering why he's so desperate to touch her. She sensed it and said, "Princes are here." Rushed him to the carriage and thanked him for today. Grabbed her hand, kissed it, and said, First time I'll live with someone. Can't wait for you to move in." A little while later, faint cries echoed from the dungeon at night. With a wipe of his hands, Kashar handed the Apilta's case to Mikhail, and the Lehmans would have to wait, as they're close to the Empress. The servant, after listening to his master, said he'd follow the orders. Then the Duke asked about the progress on preparing Eileen and the princes. He smirked when he found out everything was done. He was really waiting for them and had never been this excited. Exactly a week after the party, the young lady arrived at the Duke's castle and was stunned. But let's rewind a bit, to the morning of the move to the Cold Palace. Sir Mikhail arrived to pick up the princes, and Lady Eileen along with Emma. The luggage had been sent ahead, so all that was left was for them to show up. The kids had stayed up all night, waiting for this day. It was their first time leaving their estate, except for the festival, so the kids were buzzing with excitement. Emma was picturing the lavish garden at Reuben Castle, couldn't believe she'd actually live there. The main heroine remembered the rumors. It was said to be made of crystal. As they passed the barrier guarding the castle, Mikhail warned it might jolt a bit, but not to worry. But, as it turned out, the Duke's house was nothing like they'd been told. After inspecting it and being horrified, the lady decided it was the Devil's Castle and guessed they had the wrong address. But Mikhail corrected her, saying they were in the right place. The nanny tearfully begged the man to say it wasn't true, but unfortunately, it was. Just then, it started to rain, and the main heroine thought even the sky was on her side. She was worried about what would happen to her princes in a place like this, but the kids were already rushing to hide from the rain. A pretty intimidating guy greeted them, clearly exhausted with bloodshot eyes. Grabbing the kids, Miss immediately started complaining to Mikhail about a ghost here, but he explained it's just the butler. Taking a candle holder, the guy introduced himself as Baladshu, the butler of Reuben Castle. The girl looked at his pointed ears and dark skin, realizing he was a Min from Varahan's dark realm. That made Miss nervous. The world in the novel was split into 4 parts. The Richard Empire, founded by powerful dragons. Then there's the Holy Empire of Rubenzia. Their power comes from the Temple of Light, the 5 principalities of Sirius, who live in harmony with nature and spirits. And Varahan, home to the Mins, descendants of demons. Kasha, possessed by Alessia, started a war by beheading the Min king. That's how he conquered their whole people and turned them into his main strength. Only the strongest became king. That was the Duke's ultimate goal. Emma asked if the attendant was even human, and Eileen clarified he's a Min. The butler wasn't offended by the reaction. It's normal to be shocked meeting a Min face-to-face for the first time. The girl started asking when the fraud, specifically Kasha, would show up. But Mikhail said the master would be here tomorrow and immediately hurried off. The palace announced they should follow it because it wants to show them around the castle. But their guide suddenly dropped to his knees right in front of them, which spooked everyone. The steward apologized and said he wasn't feeling great, but would do his best to take them through. The man insisted he was fine, was amazed at how noble the princes were, then started coughing up blood. Emma fainted at the sight of the blood, but the main character couldn't let herself pass out, even though she really wanted to. Lewis prodded the sick guy and said he wasn't moving an inch, which stunned the nurse. While Ellis scolded him for poking the patient, Evan cut in and said he agreed. It'd be better to kill him and leave no trace. The girl was stunned to hear such words, but the kid explained he'd heard it from Kashar. As they talked, Maine suddenly showed up behind the main heroine out of nowhere. Turning around, Miss saw a new staff member. Only it was a maid. Passing through them, the woman grabbed the steward by the shoulders and carried him off. The lady introduced herself as senior maid Ashitroy and confirmed their identities. Since the steward was in rough shape, she said she'd take them on the tour herself. Then, to keep the guests calm, she slung Emma over her shoulder and promised to handle her. Their stroll was through a totally pitch-black hallway with 0 lights. While on the way, the maid cast a spell to cover every window. The kids were shocked to meet a mage and begged to learn magic, but Aileen was more curious why all the curtains were shut. The lady explained magic was a matter of talent, and watching them, the maid thought the twins would manage. When they arrived, Ashitra showed the new private room for Luis and Evan. They were stunned. The rooms were luxurious, and the fact they had separate ones. At least the kids' rooms looked normal, which comforted the main heroine, but she wondered where her own room was. The senior maid said it'd be on the 3rd floor, dumping Miss Emma on her bed. The maid and Aileen hurried up to the third floor. When they reached it, the lady realized there were only 2 rooms. The right one was for her. The nanny thanked them for the tour, ready to say goodbye until they stopped her. Turns out the Duke wanted her to know Aileen could visit his room anytime, day or night. As she left, the maid said she'd show the lady the castle staff and other spots tomorrow. After sorting herself out, the protagonist went to the princes to tuck them in. The boy insisted he could sleep alone and was totally brave. Moments later, his sleepy snoring echoed. The lady kissed him and said goodnight. The girl asked if Evan would go to sleep too, just like his older brother. Elin warned that if anything happens, or if he wants something, we need to head to her room on the 3rd floor. The boy asked for a hug out of nowhere, which caught the girl off guard. Evan noticed, turned red, and quickly took it back, muttering he was just gonna sleep. The girl melted, beaming, and kissed the prince before whispering him a good night. After tucking the twins in, Miss wandered the castle, hunting for the dining hall. Her throat was parched. Finally tracking it down, Elin froze. Someone was already inside. Maine was chugging some weird red drink. He spun around with a creepy grin. He'd heard Lady Harlan. The second she saw that horrifying sight, she couldn't take it anymore and blacked out. She jolted awake, hearing someone apologize. And there, right in front of her, was Kashar. She was certain she'd blacked out and figured this was just a dream. Her dreams had always been wild, but the muscle definition on this guy? Insane. The Duke's flawless face was smiling right back at her. She giggled, blushing, and called him her crazy hotshot. Then she yanked his cheek, scolding him as a fraud. How dare he trick them into moving here? The girl wasn't about to forgive him just because the Duke stripped off his shirt in her dream. The butler tried to calm her down. The lady was shocked by Drakon, the butler who wanted Miss to release his hand. Kasha, acting like nothing happened, cheeks flushed, asked if his beauty had slept well. Miss sprang back and greeted the Duke as soon as she realized what had happened. He wanted to figure out what had actually gone down, since he'd asked them to get ready for meeting his beloved. But turns out, instead of a proper greeting, the servants welcomed them all mine-style. The lady clarified that the garden decorations and the black skulls on the staircase were their work too. Also explained that for them, black and purple are the best colors, and the fountain water's good for health with herbal drink. Also, the popular animal statues in Verhan were custom ordered from the artisan. The Duke clarified that his guests, including his beloved, are humans. And this isn't about making the palace habitable the way he'd meant. The main heroine also remembered fainting when she saw Drakon, but the guy clarified that Miss had misread the situation. No blood vomit here. He pulled out a bottle, explaining it was a special porridge drink made from ground plants. The butler explained he's gone vegetarian. Long story short, he used to eat nothing but meat, but once he met veggies, his diet flipped. He added that if he were in Verhan, this diet wouldn't matter because of the dark energy there. But here, it's rejection on top of that. The main character said she was really tired and wanted to get to bed fast. But Kasha grabbed her hand and laid her on the bed, asking, "If you're so tired, where were you planning to go? Eileen's in her lover's bedroom after all." The words overwhelmed her with embarrassment and awkwardness, making her stutter. The butler hurriedly left them alone, leaving an awkward silence between them. As Lady examined the Duke's perfect body, a thought of a steamy night popped into her head. All these thoughts made the main character blush even harder, her face turning crimson. Panicking, Eileen insisted it was because she was tired, not his hot muscles. The girl felt super awkward and apologized for her harsh words. Kasha said his lover had the power to change everything to her taste. Holding his hands, the happy lady said she wasn't against it. As Eileen's tension finally eased, she felt a wave of weakness and immediately fell asleep. The night was calm, nothing happened, and the girl got a good night's sleep. As soon as the main character woke up, she jumped to her feet, feeling intense awkwardness. She immediately started scanning the room for Kasha, who had already left. Calmed down, the lady decided to return to her room as quickly as possible. Recalling yesterday, she remembered the Duke had wanted to ask her something. Just as Elaine was figuring things out, someone knocked on her door, giving her a little scare. Thinking it was Kasha coming in, she got worked up over what happened yesterday. But it was Asitra who had come to her room. The headmaid said she checked the master's room first, but didn't find the lady there, so she came here. Elaine asked where the Duke was, and the maid said he was probably at the training grounds. At the same time, Emma was already taking care of the princes who'd just woken up. Louis said he slept well and only got spooked when he realized he was alone in the room. Still, everything's good. Hearing the kids wanted to eat, the maid offered to lead them there in person. Surprisingly, the twins weren't afraid of the powerful stranger. Evan grabbed the main character's hand and said, "Is Citra's a mage?" He showed off his big curiosity and fascination with magic. Even though both twins grew up to be powerful mages, only Evan could completely control her. Emma, feeling down, apologized for yesterday. She was really embarrassed. The nanny did everything she could to calm her assistant and cheer her up. The kitchen still looked like something out of a horror movie, so Miss started wondering if the food in the dining hall would actually be edible. To her surprise, they served a ton of different fancy dishes. Chef Chev was from the Richard Empire, so the food should hit the spot for them. The food looked a little rough around the edges, but the taste was solid. A bunch of servants peeked from the doorways, cooing over the twins, but they all came to the same conclusion. Louis and Evan were total cuties. After talking about the princes, they turned their attention to the host's girlfriend. As soon as Aileen caught sight of them, they ducked away, like they were actually afraid of her. Miss wanted to know when Kashar would come for breakfast, but Ashitra clarified their master barely eats anything. The main character was shocked the Duke hardly ever eats. She's used to him wolfing down meals like a champ. The kids were stoked about the food, the variety of snacks, and how nice everyone was. But Louis pointed out he liked Aileen the most, and her cooking was the best. After hearing that, Miss started thinking her trip here wasn't a total waste after all. Kashar ruffled Louis's hair, gave him a thumbs up for doing a good job, then bounced over to his girlfriend. The servants were busy debating how genuine their feelings were, but all she cared about was no one bringing him food. The heroine decided to check in with the Duke. Was he even planning to eat? The guy claimed he only came to see her, but the lady started panicking that Kashar might lose his amazing muscles. Shouting that this wasn't working, Aileen asked if she could borrow the kitchen. The girl lit up. There was a regular kitchen here, no weird main alterations. The head maid introduced the Lord's girlfriend, Lady Eileen Harlan. The head chef said it was an honor to meet her. His name was Vivito. Miss explained they loved everything, but were there because Kashar wasn't eating. The chef said the master hadn't eaten a single thing in 3 months. After grabbing the needed ingredients, the girl decided to whip up a hearty meat dish. Soon, the dish was ready and smelled like sizzling meat and veggies. Seeing and smelling the amazing dish, everyone was blown away. Eileen explained it was pulkogi, meat sizzled with sweet and salty spices. The chef tried to place the dish but couldn't, though the aroma was driving them wild. They all wished the master would eat her carefully made dish. The lady realized that not just the head servant, but everyone else was worried about the master. After getting a bunch of blessings, the heroine beamed at them and dashed off to Kasha. The Duke was already seated in the dining room waiting, and the head chef showed up to watch personally. As time passed, a crowd of servants gathered, all staring in shock at the scene. Aileen told the Duke to eat up. He's got to set an example for the kids now. Just from his face, you could tell the food's look and smell alone had stunned him. But he schooled his expression, then took a bite to test it out. His smile and joy were written all over his face. Anyone could see it. Kasha noticed his beloved never failed to amaze him. The Duke said every time his tongue touched this dish, he fell in love with the flavor all over again. The kids wanted to taste the heroine's new dish too. Louis was most impressed by how tender and sweet the meat was. Evan was even more stunned by the sweet and salty combo. Kasha declared it was so damn good, it was priceless. But the servants were the most shocked. The master ate every last bite. The servants started treating her like a goddess, because they thought the future mistress had pulled off a miracle. They also said this was the first time the master had sensed flavor, which really shocked Aileen. The happy atmosphere shattered when Kashar's terrifying voice barked for everyone to halt. Since the kids were done eating, he offered to let them play in the room. The Duke quickly left the dining hall and vanished somewhere. The girl had no idea what was going on, but the butler stepped in to explain what she needed to know. That same evening, the heroine, lying in her room, was overwhelmed with thoughts. The heroine was heartbroken that Kashar had lost his sense of taste. The servants explained that at some point, the master lost his ability to taste, which is why he hadn't eaten in days. But why then does he claim her food tastes amazing and even describe what makes it special? The lady tried to figure it out. She recalled the condition that she had to cook for him, and honestly, She didn't get why the whole thing made her so sad. As the girl was deep in thought, she heard a knock at her door. Miss fretted it might be the kids or Ashitra, but it was Kishar who showed up. The girl, blushing and avoiding eye contact, asked if something was wrong. Turns out the Duke had come so late just to ask the lady out on a date. "Hey, I need to ask you something that stole your precious time. Let's head down together." Aileen was curious where they were headed, and Kishar explained it's the most normal spot in the whole castle. The girl grumbled a bit because she thought only her room and the twins were normal, until the guy opened the door for her. What she saw was a space completely filled with Munpir flowers. The guy was surprised the lady recognized these flowers, but she explained she'd just heard the name before. The main character knew these were Vivian's favorite flowers before she lost her mind. The whole palace was covered in Munpir, and maybe that's what affected Kishar. One unique thing about these flowers, the buds are visible during the day, but they bloom at night. Aileen loved the beauty of these flowers, and she decided to ask if that's why they brought her here to show them off. The main character wanted to ask if the Duke really had no sense of taste at all. She honestly hoped he wasn't lying when he complimented her cooking, but she heard agreement about the lack of taste. Disappointed, she looked away and sighed, saying they've been lying to her all along. But the Duke gently caught her hand and said, "I can totally taste your cooking." She took it as another lie, but Kishar explained he didn't understand why himself. He just tastes your food. To make it clear, the guy decided to swear an oath on his own family crest. He took off his jacket, turned his back, and pulled down his shirt to reveal it. The girl was shocked and excited because she instantly recognized him. This pattern was a truth vow sealed by the emperor himself. Kasha told her about his struggle with mania and how he takes poison to stay sane. The girl felt awkward and fear because she realized he was referring to alubi berries. The poison came from the mainlands. Even though it helps the Duke keep his sanity, over time it gradually dulls his senses, including the 5 basic senses that let them feel things properly. Aileen knew alubi berries caused headaches, but she understood where they came from and that they stripped away the 5 basic senses. Bowing to the lady, Kasha declared he was completely serious and felt safer being around her. The main heroine was instantly overwhelmed with emotions and mishugged the guy. The lady burst into tears, realizing how hard he'd had it, feeling only the taste of blood and rot, and promised to do her best to help him. Aileen figured that if he could taste her food, maybe things would get easier for him in the future, even though she couldn't lift the curse. With tears in her eyes, the main heroine really wanted to help him and make his life easier. The Duke looked into the lady's tear-filled eyes, and his heart fluttered. Feeling strong emotions and embarrassment, the girl picked up Kasha's clothes and, using the excuse of the cold air, said she was heading back to her room. "Hey, you're confused, right? Miss doesn't like me stripping?" But Aileen was so flustered, she snapped at him to get dressed. "Man, you'll catch a chill." Seeing the main heroine standing there all flushed, Kishar smirked and caved, turning back with him. The girl wished the dark night would swallow her face, so she stayed dead silent all the way to her room. Miss was about to vanish into her room and wish him good night when the Duke cut in, asking why she was heading there. Aileen didn't get it. What's wrong? It's her room. But the guy flat out said they'd agreed to share a bed starting today. Turns out Kishar asked her that exact thing last night, and the miss had half-mindlessly said yes. The Duke, all flustered, admitted he knew it might feel weird sleeping in a contract relationship. But he also said he was sorry. His head feels lighter when Aileen's nearby, okay? His reasoning crumbled her resistance. She gave in, but only if she stayed until he fell asleep. Kishar, staring at the sleeping heroine, was baffled. She said she'd leave once he was out. Tracing Aileen's face, he wondered if she'd stick around forever if he never shut his eyes. Her stress-free night slipped away. When the lady woke up, the palace was already gossiping like crazy. Every servant was glancing her way, whispering in hushed tones about her. Even walking the halls, she noticed the maids were suddenly dodging her for some reason. Aileen was getting more curious by the second, and practically lit up when she finally laid eyes on the head maid. The heroine was determined to track down where the butler Draco was hiding. The maid shot back, "Why's the lady looking for him?" but got just a smug grin and a cryptic, "I need to give him something." When she stormed into the room where Draco was, she caught him mid-sip of his vegetable juice. The guy was going on and on about how amazing it tasted, while Aileen just beamed. Finally, she'd tracked him down. Leaning in with a sly grin, Aileen whispered, "I've got something for you." Draco blinked in surprise, but the lady just smirked. She'd already clocked his love for spicy vegan fare. Fishing around in her purse, the lady pulled out a weird little box and tossed it to him. Draco had no clue what it was, but the miss just chuckled. Sure, veggies are great, but they're not cutting it for your system. So I thought, why not swap it for meat? If you like it, I'll show you how to whip it up myself. Grateful as ever, the butler wasted no time giving the oddball snack a taste. Eileen's nerves were on edge. After a beat, Draco just stared, wide-eyed. This is insane. Best taste ever. First time he's ever tasted anything this spicy. Grateful, yeah. But this stuff's way too precious for a lowly butler to accept. Still, the over-the-moon butler was ready to do anything for the lady. And Eileen? She just smirked, already plotting. Next thing she knew, she was asking him to lend a hand in overhauling the entire castle. The main character explained the princes are still just kids, and it'll be tough for them to adjust to society when they return to the imperial palace. After thinking it over, Daku agreed and decided to clarify exactly what needed to be changed. Happy she'd managed to work things out with the steward, they headed to Kasha to have a chat. As they made their way down from the upper floors, the main character asked how the steward ended up in Richard. Eileen complained that even with their relationship, she knew next to nothing about Kasha. The guy smiled and said the Mayans had been serving the Duke long before this palace was built. Miss guessed they knew each other before the beloved got this position, and figured they met during the war. Daku confirmed the lady's guess and explained they'd been mercenaries for allied nations. Leovan is one of Vladis's allies, situated not too far from Varahan. That's where they first met, but as enemies. But seeing Kasha's ruthlessness and the raw power he had, the Mayans didn't dare to stand up to him. Daku said they were impressed by the Lord's strength and chose to follow him. Not just the Mayans, but everyone who serves in the palace was pardoned and came over from the war, realizing it all went down when the young beloved was a deposed prince fighting in the war. The main character's heart sank like a stone when she realized Kasha wasn't ready to step up as the Mayans' king. Hearing a knock on his door, the Lord gave the go-ahead for them to come in. The Duke met the lady with a smug smile, noticing her sweet sleep where she'd completely forgotten about him. While the girl was admiring the dazzling morning beauty, the guy approached and asked why they had come to him. A little flustered, Eileen reminded them of Kashar's words. He claimed she could change the decor however she wanted. Accepting that it was his mistake, the Duke said they could go ahead without worrying about the costs. The main heroine also asked to be allowed to find the interior specialist herself and oversee everything. This was all to bring Princess Fritzio, so she needed to meet the head of Elvatoria in person. Even though her personality is very different from Kashar's, she's the top pick for his girlfriend. She wanted to find him a girlfriend before he fell for Elsie to prevent a continental war. But at that moment, the girl felt a strange sensation, like something was holding her back. The Duke grew curious how the lady planned to find the person, and she replied she'd head to Guild Street. The guy offered to go with her on a date, but Eileen refused, saying she wanted to handle it herself, and at most, one person could go with her. Those words unsettled Kashar, and after a quick moment's thought, he reached into one of the lockers. Then, he pulled out a beautiful, large blue necklace adorned with gems. Looking at it, the lady was amazed, but she also felt like she'd seen it before. As it turned out, it was the key to the fog barrier, and Kashar explained he was giving it to her because she couldn't keep dragging Mikhail around forever. The girl was super worried about the magical stone's high price, so the guy put it on her and said to keep it on forever. The main character was totally shocked by the beauty and cost of the gift. Even if you took everything Kashar had given her before, it would all be way cheaper than this. 3 whole days had passed since the Duke gave her the stone. He brought the lady to the training yard and said that before she left, there was something they needed to settle. The soldiers training on the field noticed the noble standing nearby almost instantly. Then 3 soldiers with blood on them walked over, which gave her a bit of a scare. The soldiers said they really respected the lady, since she must be tough to have won over the noble. Kashar ignored all the drama and told the lady to pick an escort who'd be in charge of her trips outside. The giants lit up instantly and started begging for their spots. Since the main guys wanted to fight her, she started wondering if they were there to protect her or take her down. Plus, she didn't like how these soldiers were way too obvious, so she started looking for someone else. As the main character scanned the yard, she was shocked. She didn't expect to see Ludwig here, which left her confused. This guy was a well-known spiritual swordsman in the novel, packing serious power. In the novel, this was the guy who backed Kashar and joined Michael's side during Elsie's kidnapping. The guy stood out because he was a half-elf who could talk to spirits. Elsie taught him how to use his powers, and he started respecting her deeply. But he never got up the guts to confess his feelings. While Island stood frozen, Kasha decided to find out if she'd picked a knight to tag along. The girl felt super awkward realizing how she must look, so she quickly pointed at Louis. The other knights were furious. They couldn't believe a total slacker like him could protect her. The main character explained that if she rode in a carriage with any of them, the carriage would totally fall apart. Aelin also said that Louis is a knight, and as long as he's got a sword, he can protect her just fine. Louis was so stunned staring at Aelin that he opened his mouth without even noticing. Kasha calmly asked if he could trust his lover's safety to Louis. Louis dropped to one knee right away and declared that if given the job, he'd lay down his life to protect her. Watching the Duke test his knight, the lady felt uneasy. It all looked more like a war mobilization than a simple trip to the city. The main character stepped closer to the guy and said, "Nice to meet you, Sir Louis." As Miss was getting excited about having such a talented guy, Kasha warned her about the risk of betrayal and what it'd mean. The next morning, before the trip, the twins showed up begging to go with Aelin, but the lady refused, saying they could join next time. Right now, she had other plans. The main heroine thanked the kids for understanding and promised to make them some gifts. Right then, Kashar sneaked up behind her unexpectedly, gently hugged her, and asked if he could get a gift too. Staring at her boyfriend's dazzling face, the lady wondered why he kept touching her more and more often. This started happening right after they saw the mantises, but the girl still couldn't get used to it. Aileen promised to make dinner when they got back, and then Kashar leaned in close to her ear and asked if she was sure she wouldn't come back before dark. The main heroine turned bright red from his whispering, but before she could react, the guy suddenly kissed her. Because of that, the girl lost touch with reality and imagined herself getting married to him. She also pictured a future where they had 2 kids, and Kashar was playfully playing with them. These thoughts wouldn't leave the lady alone for ages, making the knight worry. The lady realized she'd gotten so lost thinking about the Duke that she hadn't even noticed when she ended up in the carriage. She thought this was starting to sound like an illness, but she didn't get why Kashar had kissed her cheek. The thoughts overwhelmed her so much, her face turned red, and she blushed heavily. To calm the knight and keep the carriage moving, the lady said she was just really missing her boyfriend. After that, an awkward silence settled between them. The main heroine felt so awkward because it was her first time being alone with someone besides Kashar and the twins. Looking at the knight, Eileen thought that if the Duke's a beast of a man, then this one's more of a sad, good-looking guy. After thinking, the girl noted her beloved's more of a man, then scolded herself because she'd been thinking about him too much. The knight grew curious about why Lady Harlan picked him. Eileen explained that even though the guy isn't the strongest knight, the others are just too big. She also pointed out that just one time at the Duke's training ground is enough to realize he's a worthy knight. And with a smile, she declared she didn't think he was any less than the other knights. Arriving at the spot, the protagonist decided to ask if Sir Ludwig could make a promise to her. Without a second's hesitation, the guy was ready to follow orders right away. Eileen asked him not to tell Kasha where they'd gone today. Since he's not her subordinate, Miss doubted he'd agree to her request, but the lady's fears were unfounded. After getting his agreement, the protagonist hurried to get out of the carriage quickly. Before them appeared an extremely lively guild street with pretty tall buildings. Scanning the area, Eileen searched for the right guild and remembered that if you enter the alley, you can find folks dealing in dangerous stuff. Ludwig's knight wanted to pull out a map to know exactly where to go, but the protagonist, screaming, yanked his hand and stopped him. Lady knew that if they studied the map or stared around too long, people would realize they weren't from here. Without explaining or letting go of the knight's hand, Harlan took off in some random direction. Eventually, they stumbled into the Elven Oak Barrel, the best bar in Eliftoria. Miss asked the guy to cover her face with his cloak. As she tried to walk in, he asked if she really wanted to go into a bar. The main character snapped right back. "No, it's not what you're thinking. You'll see once we're inside." Spotted the knight's flushed face, the girl teased, "You okay back there? Getting too hot?" Snatched his hand from Lady Harlan's grip. The knight muttered, "I'm fine," Just a little sleepy. Once they'd wrapped up in cloaks, they marched straight to the barkeep. The barkeep didn't even crack a smile. Just grunted, "What'll it be, then?" Eileen straightened up, voice steady. "I'd like a green caterpillar with mushrooms." Miss remembered from the novel. When Elsia ran from Kashar, she hid out in the temple, but they tried to hold her there too. So she spilled the beans to the guild district. Had good connections with Helvetica. Eileen was glad she remembered the passcode. To get to Phrygi's office without stepping on mines, you had to be either the guard or the builder. They walked until a locked door blocked their path, but the man halted before reaching it. Turned around, he asked, "And who's backing these new guests?" The main character got really worked up because she had no clue what this was about. This was all because the book never mentioned anything besides the password. The lady was curious why the guy stood right next to the axe hanging on the wall, but still mentioned Duke Vladis's representative. The furious bartender grabbed a weapon and swung at them while yelling. Knight Lidvion popped out his sword and rushed to stand in front of his lady. A sudden burst of green magic cut their fight short. It stopped the fight dead in its tracks and snapped everyone's attention. A beaming princess in a red fancy dress popped into view. The soldiers had no clue what was going on, while their ladies cooed away. The princess explained she'd sent tons of letters her way and heard Aelin was moving into the Duke's castle. But getting into the Duke's castle wasn't a walk in the park, since it was guarded by a strong barrier. She thanked Robert for bringing her long-awaited guests. In the blink of an eye, they were in a fancy, huge room and plopped down at a table. The main character got uneasy from her companion's starstruck awe, but the princess was still curious. How in the world had Aelin discovered that passage? The girl also noticed Aelin wasn't surprised she was in charge here. Making her expression sly, the heroine declared it's a secret, and she's got a special source for inside info. Remembering the princess had been searching for her lady, she asked if this had anything to do with her auction lot. Smirking, Eliksha asked if the lady knew her alcohol had been purchased for the highest price in history. As the organization's head, she nodded, saying she wanted exclusive rights to sell the product. The girl blushed, realizing the Elvater-branded whiskey would fly off the shelves and bring in huge profits. Aelin explained the supply would be limited, and Eliksha was thrilled, because the less product there is, the higher its value. The princess also asked if there were any specific preferences for how the product should be sold. After a pause, the heroine asked for a standalone shop where only premium alcohol would be sold. Eliksha asked if they could also expect a supply of those black round pastries and packaging. The princess said she'd found the last one and decided to try the chocopi. She was shocked by how sweet it was, and curious about that white center in the middle. Blushing with embarrassment, Aelin said it was marshmallow, which made Eliksha go wild. She jumped up in excitement, asking where Miss had gotten such amazing recipes. So the princess said she'd be happy to tweak the recipe however the heroine wanted. She wasn't the one who set this up, but she still knew she needed the cash. Lewis and Evan had to awaken their magic somewhere around a year from now, but they couldn't handle the surging power and had to flee. Only the magic tower could stabilize that kind of magic. But this was basically like sending a toddler to graduate school. So Elaine decided to build something similar to a magic tower in the duchy and find the twins a tutor, neither of which was cheap. She knew the tower was basically one giant magic stone, and she didn't want to pile everything on Kashar's shoulders. Still, the main character felt this weird nagging anxiety she couldn't shake. To kick things off, Eliksha decided to sign a contract with her. The princess wrote it out in front of her using magic, which shocked Elaine completely. Watching the girl's total competence somehow made the main character feel physically uneasy. After calming down, she said she had two requests, one about hiring an interior designer. Eliksha offered to handle that personally. The second request, memories of her lover. She had doubts about their feelings, so she decided to hold off on that one for now. The princess admitted she was greedy, but wouldn't pressure her into the deal. As a friendship gesture, she promised a gift. Turns out it was a special crystal magic orb for communication. Before heading out, the main heroine asked me to track down a certain book. Then she made her way to the exit. The lady knew this area gets really dangerous at night, so she decided to get home as fast as she could. The knight was leading her through the back streets when she suddenly stopped him mid-step. She pulled out the book and declared it was a gift and a bribe to keep her secret safe. Holding up the weird-looking book, the main heroine said it had instructions on how to summon spirits, But Ludvion just turned his head and said he had nothing to do with it. Spirit summoning is only for elves and the special races in the 5 kingdoms. His mom ditched him back in the day because he sucked at spirit summoning magic. Knowing the guy in the story was still trying to figure out how to use it, the girl said she believed in him and sensed strong energy in him. Smiling because the knight actually took the gift, Aelin felt like a total flustered mess. But while the heroine was daydreaming in the clouds, the knight suddenly sprinted over and shielded her back. The lady was totally flustered by what just happened and the sudden physical contact. She didn't get what was going on until she caught an unfamiliar voice. A whole gang of bandits was coming their way, ready to take everything they owned. The main heroine's blood ran cold, while Ludvion was already on edge. A moment later, Aelin realized someone had come up behind them, surrounding the group. She realized the enemy numbers were too high, and that taking shortcuts always led to trouble. Fed up, the bandits went for the attack, while the knight ordered her to stay close. The guy was so focused on the frontline enemies, he didn't realize the hulking brute had crept up on them. He spotted her flashy necklace and instantly lunged at the main heroine with his sword. But just then, the magical stone exploded, halting the attack mid-swing. Emitting a blinding light, it shattered the sword completely. Overcome with fear and tears, the lady suddenly felt Kashah's familiar warmth and heard his voice. "I told you it was dangerous out there." She thought she was just imagining Kashah again, until she realized he was actually there. Staring at the Duke with her heart racing, the heroine finally admitted she had a crush on him. A little while later, they finally made it back to the castle, where everyone had been waiting for ages. Lady Aelin apologized to the kids for the mess-up, and Lewis immediately bombarded her with questions about the gifts and how wild the outside was. Aelin froze. She'd totally forgotten the gifts. The twins thought she was coming down with something, and Kashah backed them up by explaining the attack. Holding her close, the Duke assured the princes there was no need to worry. She was safe because he'd saved her. Feeling totally embarrassed, the heroine admitted to Lewis and Evan that she'd forgotten their presence. The kids insisted there was nothing to worry about since their main gift was her safety. The younger brother was a little down because he really wanted to protect her on his own, so he thought he should learn sword fighting. But the girl asked, "What about studying magic?" Lewis got interested in the idea, and the lady explained they'd both study, with Eileen trying to find a good teacher. Watching this, Kashar said they needed other tutors for all the subjects little princes needed to know. The kids were a bit spoiled, thinking magic was enough. But the Duke explained that without this, they wouldn't become gentlemen. The brothers wished each other good dreams before heading to their rooms. Walking alone with Kashar down the hall, the heroine couldn't stop stealing glances at him. The guy caught on and asked what she was thinking, but the lady, flustered, remembered the dinner she promised. But it was way too late. The Duke declared that if Eileen really wanted to do something for him, let her start by stepping into his room. From Kashar lying on her lap, glowing intensely, the heroine's heart couldn't take it. The lover noticed she wasn't looking at him, and the lady said it was because of the broken expensive necklace. But the Duke explained there was no point worrying about it since it was one-time use. He added another spell to the barrier, so the magic stone became useless. The lady remembered this necklace was identical to the one Elsius wore in the original. After Elsius ran off from Kashah, Michael gave her this necklace to make sure he didn't lose her. She also remembered the magic sealed inside the necklace. In times of danger, it would summon the person the owner wanted to see most. Before the original story started, it belonged to Kashah, and the lady destroyed such a valuable item. The guy sighed and said, if she felt so guilty, she might as well hug him. It helped with his headache. Gazing at the Duke's flawless face, the heroine's heart tried to leap out of her chest. Mikhail and Ludvion aren't bad-looking, but Aelin's heart didn't race for them like this. In the next second, they were lying face to face. Totally flustered, the heroine wanted to know if the man in front of her was sleeping. The girl was stunned he could sleep so soundly right next to her. Aelin figured only her heart was racing, and she blamed it on the fact she wasn't a princess. But even with the Duke so close, it was her. She had the chance to seduce him. It then hit her. Why find someone else to love him when she could do it herself? And she perked up instantly. Dressed in a beautiful gown, the heroine scribbled notes on a piece of paper. The servants peeking from the shadows were awestruck by her beauty. Eileen was stressing out because she thought she was way worse than she actually was. When the main character got a guest alert, she rushed to greet them. She was relieved she hadn't mentioned Kashar back then. and was sure they'd never cross paths unless it was through her. Instead of the interior designer she expected, the lady saw a princess. Turns out Lady Phrygia's into interior design. She pulled out a bunch of certificates to prove her credentials. The main character hoped her friend hadn't come to cozy up to the Duke. Scanning the room, the princess immediately realized everything was done in the main style, smiled and asked to handle the project herself. Elaksha decided to meet Kashar. Main character felt awkward at the sudden request. Just as if the universe was messing with her, the Duke walked over to check out the guest. Kashar leaned against the wall, arms crossed, clearly annoyed. The princess bowed to Vladis and said, "Long time no see," went over, pulled his lover close, and asked why Elaksha had come. Main character didn't get it and caught a weird sigh. Eileen immediately got really upset because she started thinking the princess was his first love. Elaksha asked if the Duke had paid for all the future expenses. Learning that he had, under the pretense of discussing payments, they went into a separate room together. Watching them, Miss caught herself thinking they made a cute couple and looked like lovebirds. Feeling upset, the protagonist remembered she had actually wanted to bring them together. After talking it over, Elaksha said they agreed to go with what Eileen wanted and not worry about the money. And as the protagonist wondered if they were really just talking about money, a child's voice echoed down the hallway. They were twins, clearly armed with swords, just finishing up a game of knights. Lewis introduced himself to the guest and quickly introduced his grumpy little brother. Laughing and calling them cuties, the lady introduced herself as Phrygia. The protagonist noticed her friend was gentle with the kids, which made her certain she was the perfect candidate for the Duke's lover. After chatting a bit more, the young princes dashed off down the hallways to play. Looking at them, Phrygia said they were definitely members of Richard's imperial family. She also mentioned she could sense a huge magical energy from them. It could be amazing, or it could be dangerous. Hearing that, Eileen immediately decided to ask if she could be introduced to someone who could train them in magic. Elaksha explained she'd gladly handle it herself, but she just doesn't have the time. The lady was upset and asked if someone could be sent instead. Phrygia replied there was no need. There was already an outstanding mage here. Eileen guessed she meant Michael's adjutant, and the other one confirmed it. Then the princess decided to share his nickname from the magic tower. Everyone called him the Gray Psychopath. Phrygia laughed and said it's because his lab was totally gray. But the problem was, one day it exploded, and the whole magic tower turned gray. Everyone was confused about what to do, and felt awkward about how it looked. But Michael was the only one who, looking at the new color, said it looked nice now. After that, the guy paid for cleaning up the magic tower, and then got exiled. And just as if on purpose, Michael approached from behind them at that moment. He was curious what the ladies were getting so worked up about. The adjutant was also curious why Elaksha had come here. Her friend said that even though she didn't like him, they could safely ask for his help. Before the main heroine could react, Phrygia was already rushing off to take a closer look. Looking at the adjutant, the main heroine hesitated whether to ask him. Gathering her thoughts, Aelin still decided to ask for a minute of their time. Noticing his gaze linger on Elaksha's back, the heroine asked if he liked the princess. The guy blushed and turned away, wondering why she was asking him that. The heroine clarified she'd seen his love-struck look. After that, Mikhail got even more flustered by the lady. Awkward even. Aelin mentioned their talk with the princess, and the adjutant corrected her. It wasn't about the tower, it was about Phrygia. The painting of Elaksha standing against the gray backdrop really impressed him. He added he was still planning to leave the tower soon to finish the gift. The heroine instantly guessed what he meant. The gray earrings, specifically. In the second half of the original novel, Phrygia fought beside Elsius as an archmage. Kashar nearly killed her when the earrings shattered. They could only block an attack once. Realizing Mikhail had made them, the girl couldn't understand why he didn't confess his feelings and let her die. The adjutant explained he'd first thought the lady was another fraud, claiming she could cure the master of his madness. But over time, he realized it wasn't true. That's why the girl finally understood why Mikhail had been so cold to her. The guy bowed to her, offering his apologies, though they were long overdue. In a casual chat like this, Eileen figured it was a good chance to ask about Prince training. After thinking it over, the guy agreed to help. He owed her after acting like a tool. He apologized for dragging Lady Phrygia along with him. Realizing the girl had no clue, Mikhail held back the jab. He'd save it for later. They slipped into the office, where the noise was booming, then crouched to eavesdrop. Turns out it was a shouting match between the Duke and the Princess, and apparently their fights never ended. Both too stubborn to back down. Watching the royal bicker with the Archmage? Blood pressure through the roof. Mikhail explained they'd been at war for years. Same business interests, zero compromise. Duke finally snapped, blaming himself for bringing her here to tease her. Eileen fired back, claiming she'd had zero idea. It wasn't his fault. The princess tackled her friend, begging her to dump Kasha. Had no clue how she stuck it out. The guy mumbled they should just kick the guest out. Princess cut him off. She was here as Eileen's guest. Phrygia asked her friend flat out, how could she even date someone with such a toxic vibe? Noted the Duke had weird quirks. But Lady Eileen blinked, caught off guard, and froze. The princess caught wind that her friend might be in danger, so she's willing to help. The main heroine, after a moment's thought, could only say she likes kasher. After that line, a heavy, awkward silence dropped over the room. Eileen froze in shock. She'd planned to tell him while he was grilling steak, in a more romantic setting. The girl was sure she'd messed up, until her boyfriend rushed over, all eager to know when she'd started liking him. Blushing and flustered, she looked away, unsure how to answer. Phrygia caught on. They weren't even dating. The Duke shut her down with his magic, since Eileen just said she likes him. Blushing, he begged her to say it again, eyes full of spark. Holding his hands, she repeated she likes Kashar. The annoyed princess yanked Mikhail and suggested tea, muttering she can't figure out how the Duke's magic beats a real mage's. As soon as they were alone, they shuffled over to the closest couch. Kasher grinned, asking why she was giving him the third degree. She thought he'd made the first move, but the Duke clarified. Eileen's got a knife in her hand and no idea what he's thinking. Kasher beamed, voice trembling, and declared he likes Eileen. He gently brushed her cheek. Her heart raced like never before. The main character immediately declared that cheating was off the table. The Duke clarified, if Miss betrays him, that poor sap will lose all his limbs. Aelin froze in horror for a second, vowing never to cheat. The guy shot back, claiming he'd be just as loyal. Overwhelmed by a storm of emotions, he passionately and tenderly kissed his beloved. 3 days had passed since Phrygia arrived. The interior renovation of Maine's estate was in full swing. She was on site, personally overseeing every detail to ensure the plan was followed exactly. Even the servants jumped into the work to wrap up the renovation as fast as possible. All the precious statues the Maines were so proud of were among the first to go. But that wasn't the issue at all. The main character's mood was off the charts happy. Emma started getting worried. Something was definitely off with the mistress. Flowers were sprouting from her head, for crying out loud. She figured if she had wings, she'd take off right then and there. The world would be perfect, bursting with joy for her. Her friend's unexpected words, clearly laced with distress, shattered the idyll. Lady Phrygia, once all smiles, now radiated nothing but anger and outrage. Even though the princess was furious, she decided to triple the price for the interior work. Pulling out the blueprint, the main character asked to tweak one part of the interior concept. Aelin knew the house was being built for newlyweds, so she figured the kids would love it if they added a pond out back. Some parts of Phrygia's blueprints didn't make sense, but the main heroine quickly explained what Onkal was. Catching the opportunity, Miss got fired up and asked to build a business around it. Alaksha pleaded with tears, because the Duke took everything from her, and this could be a solid business. Having grabbed the blueprints and already happy about the sealed deal, her friend rushed to send requests to the craftsman. Watching how the sunlight lit their home, the girl was glad to be leaving the Min King's castle. Scanning the area, the main heroine noticed the headmaid walking past. Noticing no response, Aileen grew alert, spotting the bandage over her eyes. Miss hurried to catch up and figure out why this was happening. Stopping her and asking about it, the main heroine made Ashitra feel awkward. After thinking, the lady realized she couldn't look at the sunlight, so the servant apologized for dragging her into it. The main heroine decided to check if anyone else among the Mins had this same issue. Aileen felt awkward for getting so excited without considering others' struggles, so she vowed to not let it slide. The next morning, the girl rushed to track down the headmaid. Then the main heroine announced she wanted to give her something and handed over a box. After opening it, Ashitra had no clue what the weird item in front of her was. Aelin explained, "These are sunglasses to protect your eyes from the sun." The main heroine was super glad the shop had an eyewear section. The lady offered to try them on. Ashitra obeyed and was amazed. The main heroine was shocked her eyes didn't hurt and realized she hadn't looked at the sun in ages. Elin told her to keep the gift and said she wouldn't change the annex where the Mays live. Ashitra called the lady a benefactor. Since her arrival, the always quiet castle had come to life. She was genuinely grateful to Lady Harlan, but after a pause, she corrected herself and called her future mistress. A month had passed since the renovation began, and they'd finally wrapped everything up. Fritzia was thrilled they'd finished the work so fast. The west and east wings of the castle were done in the Hanno style. The lady was impressed how the tiled roof fit perfectly, and the Seochji statues flanked the main entrance. The main heroine praised the craftsman, who recreated them just by looking at her keychain. The butler loved the statue's beauty, and the miss explained they're meant to ward off bad energy. Draku wanted to see them in the wild, but the miss said they might be just as rare as a dragon. They also installed radiant floor heating, but the biggest deal was building their own magical tower. It came into being through Mikhail and Phrygia's tremendous efforts. The twins were the most amazed by the magic tower, hands down. Aileen said the tower's the real deal and brought their teacher over. He decided to greet the twins again, but this time as a mage, Mikhail Evans. Inspired by the upcoming lessons, the kids were buzzing with energy. Aileen noticed how serious Evans and Louis were about their relationship and asked if they liked the tower. Louis immediately cheered. "It's stunning. I'm gonna work super hard." But Evan clearly had something on his mind, even though he said he'd give it his all. Aileen knew his drive was different. He always pushes himself to the max. To help him unwind, Miss kissed him unexpectedly on the cheek. The main heroine told him not to overdo it. She'd worry if anything happened to him. Then she kissed Louis. And right then, Aileen suddenly lifted her beloved into the air. Turns out the Duke heard the kissing and demanded they only do that with him. Noticing the jealous reaction, Evan proudly and cockily asked for another kiss. Aileen was flustered by the behavior, and Kashaw was clearly hurt by the remarks. The Duke told the kid that only lovers do stuff like that, but Evan just smirked and said what could he do if she kissed him first. While the duchy was a picture of peace, big stuff was going down at Shayna's temple. The central chamber glowed with a massive goddess statue. In one of the study rooms, 5 priests gathered around a table. They were thrilled that the Ologia party brought in a mountain of donations. It'd be a lifesaver for the temple, but they were scratching their heads about how such a huge sum came from the auction. The donations came from Evan and Luis, and their nanny handled the goods. The 5th temple priest argued they needed to dig deeper into her, and even floated the idea of branding her as the birth of an apostle. Another priest wasn't buying it, worried they might not hit that donation high again next year, with the Holy Child on the way. They were buzzing about the house continent, but Shayna's holy goddess hadn't shown up yet. The priests were sweating bullets. If the Holy Child didn't show, donations might dry up. But one priest smirked and shot back, "All thanks to the goddess's grace." A new Macaulay shop and upscale snack store opened in Nike Square. Every review and newspaper wrote about it, and they took off like wildfire. Though the main heroine didn't visit in person, she caught how popular it was through her surveillance crystal. Qualified professors recommended by Kashar started visiting the Steel Castle to train the young princes. To keep people from being shocked by the Mames, they used the home magic tower to make them look more human. Guests who spotted the castle repairs through the fog spread rumors, and Elvitor's company got a flood of new orders. All this combined made the duchy's reputation grow stronger every day. The servants were watching the future mistress again as she scribbled something down. After waiting till evening, Eileen rushed to grab the princes and tuck them in. Lewis said he aced his history test, and they'd let them ask questions if they earned the points. Evan stayed quiet as usual, unlike his older brother. Eileen asked if he liked magic lessons. The kids noticed bedtime wasn't here yet and asked why they were getting tucked in already. To get out of it, Miss made up a story about kids in the new country sleeping early to grow taller and stronger. Trying to speed up the bedtime routine, the main character's mind was already on the capital's street festival. Eileen was totally nervous about how to ask her boyfriend out on a date, so instead of agonizing over it, the lady decided to send a classic love letter. After slipping on her dress and accessories, the lady was thrilled her date prep was finally done. As she stepped outside, the girl caught sight of her waiting love interest. He looked even more handsome when he smiled after she asked if he had to wait too long. He was surprised. But instead of replying, he had this super flustered, awkward face, keep turning around. The main heroine decided to invite him the next day at 8 p.m. in front of the Central Park. No signature attached. Kashar explained he first thought some burly guy challenged him to a duel. The lady, blushing, clarified it was a date invitation. The Duke was surprised, but the heroine explained the capital's having a night festival. Smiling, he grabbed her and said he'd rather take her to bed. The lady was hurt. They barely knew each other, and she was furious. Kashar kissed her hand, said he loved the letter because she wrote it. Eventually, the heroine convinced him to go to the festival. The lady was shy, but happy they were just holding hands. The Duke, looking at the stalls, noticed something weird. The heroine asked what's up, but he pointed at the bear, said it looked like her. Eileen looked closer and saw it was a plush toy. She thought it was cursed, but Kashar didn't care. He started asking how to get it. The Duke got 5 darts and had to score 100 points to get a prize. Noticing his customers already had a target, the shopkeeper said they'd need to score 20 points each time. But before finishing his sentence, Kasha landed all 5 darts dead center in one smooth move. Passing it to the main heroine, the guy explained it was his answer to her letter. At the romantic gesture, Eileen's heart started racing. Up close, the bear looked even scarier. But after hearing that other couple, Miss decided she had to kiss him too. Bolstered by confidence and determination, the lady decided to stick to the dating rule. From the rapid heartbeat and panic, Eileen lost her balance and clumsily kissed Kasha on the cheek. And just then, an old drunk man strolling by, grinning like a fool, ruined the whole vibe. After that, Eileen got all flustered and started ranting about how awkward her kiss was. Kasha chuckled at her dramatic reaction. As the fireworks started, the Duke grabbed her hand and led her off somewhere. Around the corner, he accused her of lying when she said she'd kissed plenty before. Eileen was flustered and confused why her boyfriend was so skilled with physical stuff. But Kasha joked that maybe he was born to meet a girl who couldn't kiss worth a damn. The Duke gently pulled her face close and declared she was clumsy and needed to step up her game. The festival carried on, and the fireworks kept getting brighter, lighting up the night sky. Eileen was completely lost in her lover's kiss. After a while, the couple headed back out to enjoy the festival. Staring at the variety of food, the heroine was amazed. She remembered that the best part of any festival is the eats. The lady knew Kashar couldn't taste a thing, so she figured this was her chance to take the lead. After that, they headed to the lake's edge, where the girl had everything ready for a picnic. The Duke was shocked she'd managed to set it all up. She smirked and said, "Don't underestimate a girl's purse." Sitting beside her, the guy was curious about the little box she held. Since it was magical food, it was still warm, and inside was a roasted chicken. The guy was genuinely stunned by the scent. It was nothing like the blood he was used to sensing. The Duke hurriedly grabbed a bite, eager to taste it. Eileen watched him and realized her lover looked like a chicken commercial come to life. The girl then suggested clinking glasses. Chicken and beer are a rule after all. They spent the evening together, watching the stunning lake views. Not long after, they devoured all the chicken and drank plenty of alcohol. The Duke was curious how his lover cooked. Aelin decided to double-check her knowledge and asked if mania was a curse. The lady also declared she wanted to break the curse and get rid of that thing on Kashar's back. Looking sadly at the sky, his beloved said he hated the seal more than anything. Aelin realized there was less than a year left before Elsius would awaken as a saint. Alubi fruits are just a temporary fix. Only Elsia's power can break the curse. Instead of a straight answer, the guy started moving toward the main heroine. He declared he knew the best way to break the curse, and it's 10,000 kisses from Aelin. Fuming because they were pressuring her before she could finish her perfect date checklist, the lady protested, but eventually fell for his trick. Then, exhausted, she passed out on the spot. The Duke covered the main heroine because he was worried about her health. Staring at his sleeping lover, his mind was a storm of thoughts. For the first time, he realized his feelings for her on that balcony at the Olaja party. When she touched his forehead, he felt a glow on his back and realized she was special. But when Aelin was about to whip him, Kashar realized she wasn't just a tool to him. When the main heroine faced danger, the Duke wanted to destroy them all. He felt that way from the very beginning. The Duke realized this girl could not only cure the side effects of Alubi fruit, but actually interfere with the curse itself. Even though he'd longed to break the curse for so long, now he was more worried about keeping Aelin by his side. Seeing how smashed his lover was, he laughed. He'd been fed soda while she got to drink real alcohol. As the Duke carried the heroine, a brilliant light burst from her chest. He instantly recognized the phenomenon, but his voice held only panic. Time passed since that night, and the lady had the head chef cooking up her favorite dishes. The chef was hooked on the heroine's wild, creative ideas. The chef was grateful he'd gotten to learn another recipe today. After calming down, she sped off toward the princes. Aileen was impressed by their focus and calm during lessons. She worried they'd started late, but to her shock, they picked things up like pros. Walking the castle halls and peering out the window, the girl spotted a familiar face. It was Sir Ludwion. The two hadn't seen each other in ages. To grab his attention, she called out to him from the window. But instead of the reaction she expected, the knight took off the second their eyes met. The girl started wondering why Sir Ludwion kept ditching her. A second later, the knight heard the lady's voice closing in behind him again. He turned to see her storming toward him, eyes blazing, demanding he stop right there. He bolted faster until the lady suddenly tripped over a rock. A gust of wind yanked her back up mid-fall, slamming her upright like a gust reset her. The knight was sweating over whether Lady Harlan was hurt. His nerves were through the roof. Aileen flipped out in the best way when she realized it was the wind spirit. The knight could summon it in the story, but it hadn't taken shape yet. Ludwion felt like a hot mess under her stare. Calming down, Miss Harlan straightened up and demanded to know why he'd tried to run. He called himself a sinner, dropped to his knees, and begged her to take his life. But the heroine snapped at him to chill. She'd never touch blood. She grabbed his wrist and yanked him back before he could even unsheath his sword. Then she blushed hard and warned, if he even tried to pull that sword out, she'd really lose it. Ludwion averted his eyes while the knight's face burned redder every second. Regaining her composure, Aileen fist-pumped and told him he'd nailed it. Summoning the spirit was wild as hell. The lady pointed out he protected her back then, and if he's really sorry, he should keep protecting her. Spotting the falling leaves, the girl realized autumn had just arrived. Remembering her lover's birthday was only a week away, Miss got super excited. After that, Lady Harlan rushed off to the capital, heading to Nike Street to pick out a gift. For their first gift, they decided on something practical, like a pen or a tie. Hearing this, the knight suggested heading to the nearby accessory store. But just their luck, the manager came out, rang a bell, and announced the event was over for anyone without a pre-registered number. Aileen wanted to go into a popular shop with a crowd of people, only to realize it was her own store. The girl suggested popping into the store that had just closed for a second. The guy noticed the approaching couple and said tickets were all sold out for the day. Approaching him, the lady said she knew about the tickets, but admitted she really loved chocolate pies. The employee immediately recognized her as the manager, but the knight had no clue what was going on. Stepping inside, they found a shop that was fancy and well-designed. In a special dish, after a whole shift, only the bottom of the chocolate pie remained. The heroine loved how everything was set up here, and the fact that it was all top-notch. The knight double-checked if the shop was really hers, and she confirmed it right away, though she also said she'd never been here before. After getting her fill of looking around and seeing everything was going smoothly, Aileen was about to keep working when she heard a familiar voice. It was Jayanna Endres, the novel's first villainess. Miss Aileen got curious about why she was here. The main character remembered she'd won her at the Elogi Festival, so she figured Jayanna probably didn't want to see her. Miss Endres accused Lady Craft of cutting in line. Needling Lady Craft, she mocked Jayanna's over-the-top reaction over a single dessert. One of the workers rushed over to stop the fight. She was also shocked and couldn't believe 2 tickets could look the same. After getting them and checking, the worker couldn't believe it. But Lady Aileen cut in, asking to inspect the tickets herself. Craft instantly snapped and demanded why they were getting involved. Facing that negativity, the main character pulled down her hood and said she was the shop's manager. The women were confused, but Aileen told them not to waste her time and to hand over the tickets fast. After looking, Harlan pointed out the one that didn't come from her store. Craft swore they were the same, but it turned out the paper was printed with a special trick. When held to the light, the unique stamp shows through. To cover up, the lady claimed the shopkeeper gave it to her. Aileen smiled calmly and said they could quickly check Lady Craft's lies with the security cameras. Harlan explained the cameras are set up at the entrance for store security. Craft fumed, spun around, and declared she'd never set foot here again. Aileen spotted the woman leaving with a chocolate pie and called out, "You can walk out like that, but you're banned from my store for good." Meanwhile, the main character's maid was right at the entrance, rushing in. She reported to Emma, who was still in the warehouse, that the customers had gotten into a fight. Eileen asked her to sprinkle some salt here too to clear out the bad vibes. The main character grabbed a chocolate pie and handed it to Miss Endress. Lady Endress was about to let the guest go, since she wanted to return the favor someday, but Eileen had an idea and decided to ask for help right now. Harlan then announced a shopping trip with Jayana. Looking at the accessories, Jayana realized both were stunning. Noticing Eileen's hesitation and excitement, Jayana guessed she was looking for a gift for the Duke. Hearing they were all beautiful, but none perfect, Lady Endress sighed. Then she pointed and said something like, "That would do for a gift." The main character was taken aback by such an unconventional pick, cufflinks. But when she looked closer, the rubies on them shimmered, and Eileen instantly knew they'd look amazing on her boyfriend. Jayana nodded and said they'd pair well with another accessory. Turns out it was a matching stunning brooch. Different items, same design. The main character thanked Miss Endress for helping her choose. It wasn't too tough for her. She had 3 older brothers. Thinking they were done, Jayana turned to leave, but Eileen caught her wrist. Harlan asked if she liked Duke Vladis. The main character explained she asked because she wanted to be friends with her. Jayana instantly bristled. She was terrified of her parents. Eileen said in their day, just growing up and staying out of trouble was thanks enough for their parents. Flustered, Miss Endress finally agreed to be Eileen's friend. The main character beamed. She loved making friends. To celebrate their new friendship, they were about to hit the shops when a voice cut through from behind. A guy on a white horse appeared, his stare cold and dismissive. By his eye color, Elaine instantly recognized him. He was the heir Prince Valentine, standing right in front of her. Their resemblance to Empress Vicina was so uncanny, you couldn't help but notice. Though he was a pain in the butt because of his status, they still had to keep up appearances. The prince was surprised the 2 ladies were friends, but Elaine quickly clarified they weren't. She'd only accidentally stained Lady Andra's dress and planned to make it up to her. After a quick exchange, the girls got the message. Jayana asked for permission to leave. As she left, Miss Endress warned her friend to be extra careful, knowing that even a little delay with the prince would start rumors. Harlan wanted out fast, but he announced he was about to explain how to break the Kashar curse. Seeing her interest, the heir prince decided to start by changing locations. Elaine felt awkward about him having a private room in the shop. Ludvina wasn't allowed in, so he just stood guard at the door. The main character just wanted to listen and get out of there fast. The heir prince asked if she knew Kashar's illness was actually a curse. Even the emperor didn't know the duke's madness came from the empress's curse. He claims he knows the way out, but won't spill it unless Miss starts dating him. Full of himself, he also said not to worry about his mom. If she finds out Aylin's with him, the empress will forgive the girl's early rudeness. The heir prince confidently declared it might seem like his mom's got a hard heart, but really, she's got a soft spot inside. Realizing and understanding his stupidity and ego, the lady thought to herself, "This guy's nuts." Not only was Valenti sure she'd start dating him, he even offered to apologize to his mom, who tried to kill her. Even if there was another way besides using the main character's power, she wasn't buying into this nonsense anymore. After that, the lady, about to leave, said she'd reject the offer and pretend they never had this chat. Furious, the prince lashed out at the girl, shouting she didn't know how to be thankful. Feeling the pain, Aylin realized Valenti was way more vicious than he looked. He was dead sure he was right, and the rejection was just because she chatted with a freaking monster. The prince couldn't wrap his head around how the main character dared reject his help and wanted to punish her himself. But their showdown was cut short by a sudden knock on his room, something that really got Valenti's goat. Miss Andy stormed into the room, even though the servants tried to block her. Aylin realized help was finally here, but she couldn't utter a single word. After a quick plan, the friend declared the compensation was too low and asked for a check. Looking at the floor, the protagonist immediately recognized Jayana's bracelets. Smashing the bracelet, she accused Miss of trying to make up for her rudeness with some trinket. Also declared that Eileen had no shame or conscience, exactly as people said about her. Getting into character, Harlan asked how she'd offended Lady Endress so badly that they just wouldn't let her go. But she insisted she had every right to demand compensation for the rudeness. Seeing the conflict, the heir prince fumed at how the girls were acting in front of him. Miss Endress apologized for Eileen's outburst and vowed to take responsibility for etiquette lessons. Upset and angry, Valentid said it was time to go and that they'd leave together right now. The friends shot each other angry glances to keep up their act. As the prince walked away, the girls kept bickering non-stop. Right then, Eileen heard a cheerful, familiar voice. Turning around, the protagonist spotted a blonde guy by a white horse. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, calm settled in Eileen's chest. She couldn't believe Kashar was there. He'd thought her little escape was super secret. Valentid said he was sorry to have to say it. They hadn't seen each other in ages. Grabbing the main heroine and pulling her close, the heir prince declared that Aelin is really into him. Harlan was shocked by what this scoundrel was saying, after he'd recently treated her so cruelly. Kashar's eyes showed clear annoyance and anger, teetering on the edge of murderous intent. As the heir prince bragged, Duke Vladis reached for his blade. Realizing what might happen, the lady made a sudden move, pretending she felt dizzy. As she casually walked past the heir prince, she pulled out some weird object from her pocket. Then she stuck it to Valentid's backside, making sure he didn't notice. As soon as she'd done it, she rushed to Kashar and announced she felt awful from being out in the fresh air too long. At that moment, a servant approached, saying the heir prince needed to head to the empress. Valentid felt an unusual sense of superiority and thought he was totally awesome for needling Duke Vladis. But as soon as he mounted his horse, a deafening fart echoed from underneath him, so loud that everyone nearby was stunned and turned their attention to it. Watching this, everyone felt intense awkwardness when a second equally loud fart followed. The heir prince's arrogant face vanished in that instant, and the crowd watching Valentide, all keeping a deathly silence, kept growing. Making another careless move, his fart echoed loudly enough that even a kid pointed it out with their finger. Aelin blushed and pretended not to be involved, asking if the heir prince didn't do glute workouts. After those words, gossip and dirty talk started spreading through the crowd. The main character was happy she'd used a smothering pillow to teach the heir prince a lesson. Jayana was in shock at what she'd just seen and heard. A few moments later, the chattering crowd scattered back to their business. Feeling a piercing gaze, Miss realized why. Harlan hadn't told him about the town trip. Ignoring the joke, Kasha asked, "Lady, you said cheating's not allowed, so why is your partner Valentid?" So as punishment, Duke Vladis considered chaining Miss up in shackles. Remembering a romance novel where Kasha locked Elsie up with ankle chains. Terrified of the punishment, the lady explained she'd just bumped into him while she was picking out a gift. The guy didn't get why the gift, but Aelin declared she'd been gathering it for her sweetheart's birthday. Even though Kasha hadn't celebrated since losing his heir title, the girl declared she couldn't skip such an important day. The main character wanted the Duke to have a warm birthday. He'd never had one before, so Aelin explained this day would be special. Adjusting his hair, Kasha said he'd be waiting. The guy didn't know if they'd already chosen his gift, but he wanted something super cliché. Before giving an example, Kashar leaned in toward the heroine's ear and glared at the knight like he meant business. The guy instantly picked up on the bad vibes and turned his face away fast. Vladis then said he wanted something like, "I'm your gift." Using the magic in his necklace, the couple warped straight to the Duke's private chambers. Miss begged him to wait. She wasn't even ready yet, but still kissed him back. The heroine's face was burning red, her eyes wide with flustered embarrassment as she stared at her lover. Kashar, standing right in front of Eileen, demanded he get his gift early. Harlan loved him, so she just wrapped her arms around the Duke in a soft hug. No words needed. Then she kissed the guy of her dreams like there was no tomorrow. The Duke's room stayed soaked in romance and love all night long. A beautiful, sunny autumn morning rolled in, light breeze tugging at the curtains. This time, the heroine didn't rush to slip out of Kashar's room quietly. The couple soaked up the sweet moment, perfectly in sync and totally relaxed. She couldn't believe it. When she opened her eyes, a massive, sculpted chest was right there. Even though Lady Eileen was flustered thinking back on last night, she knew the story had just taken a total turn. Eileen was just about to get up and leave the Duke when he suddenly snapped awake and grabbed her wrist. Lady Eileen gave him another birthday shout-out and told him she had to get up to get something ready. Kasha wasn't happy about having to part so soon, but she said they'd meet in the dining hall. The chefs were already waiting for their future lady of the house and had all the veggies prepped and ready. They let her know almost every dish their former lady taught them was already on the line. Eileen was pretty proud she'd already trained them up in Korean cooking before this. Now she was finally ready to plate the star of the birthday spread. With her hype levels through the roof, she whipped up that beef seaweed stew in no time. The head maid came in to say the Lord's celebratory feast was all set. A 12-course spread. Lady Eileen wasn't letting anything stop her from serving it. Kasha's jaw hit the floor when he laid eyes on all those wild, exotic dishes. While he was still reeling, Lady Eileen just gave him another birthday cheer. Staring at that fancy dish, the guy's nerves went through the roof. He had to know, what the heck was that green dish in front of him, and why did it have such a weird name? Right then, a powerful earthquake shook the entire duchy. The magic tower took the brunt of it, shaking the hardest. Aileen sprinted outside and immediately went looking for the twins to make sure they were safe. Louis latched onto his nanny right away, but she was already asking where Evan was. Mikhail, sweating and clearly worried, explained the tremor was coming from the tower, and the younger prince wasn't in the palace. This tremor was caused by magic inside the tower, and it looked like Evan was in there too. Scared, Kashar bolted into the tower to get the kid out before it was too late. Luis, tears in his eyes, rushed off after his brother without hesitation. The main heroine couldn't leave the kids in such a dangerous place, so she joined the rush. Stepping inside, they found the whole place covered in massive ice crystals. Aileen looked up, her heart racing. This was bad. Right there, the prince was floating unconscious, encased in ice. The main heroine's panic spiked the moment she saw him. Kashar channeled his power and shot toward the kid, determined to free him. Vladis shattered the ice and caught shivering, freezing Evan just in time. Eileen hurried over to check on him right away. Kasha told them to stay back. His mana's still unstable. The prince is awake, but way too soon. Eileen was confused. In the original, the prince was supposed to wake up in a whole year, and the scene was all about a magic explosion. Everything's way off. The main character didn't get why only Evan woke up. Kasha explained the kid just showed up on instinct. If they hadn't found him in time, he'd have frozen everything. Vladis stabilized him, but they need to keep him in the tower for a few days under observation. Louis was worried about when his brother Evan would wake up. Eileen hugged Louis. "We just need to wait a little longer," she said. Mikhail explained, "Magic's like the ocean. The opening's just a coin-sized hole. Anyone trying to control that magic without the right skills is in danger, so they need to watch him closely. Evan's instinctively trying to control it. Kasha promised to stay until the kid wakes up." The lady calmed down, smiling. "The dish your love asked about is called miyek kuk." He was so shocked, he instinctively gasped. It was familiar to him. Eileen insisted they eat it. It's a birthday soup. This was the dish Kashar remembered from way back as a kid, the one his mom always made for him on holidays.